Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area. We recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda, please? Councillors Barry and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Richards, be resolved the September 5th, 2024 meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes? Councillors Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry, be resolved council approves the August 15th, 2024 regular council meeting minutes as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. So we're going to go into a public meeting to begin to discuss the application for zoning bylaw amendment age ZBA 00924. I'd like to just let you know of what that process is going to look like so you can follow the bouncing ball and you know where each of you can come in, and also to establish a few ground rules for that process. So we are first going to pass a motion to go into the public meeting. Our town planner will speak first. He will present his report. Council will be able to ask any questions that they have of the town planner. Then we will be inviting the applicants to step forward and offer whatever insights they would like to offer. And there will be a question and answer opportunity for council there as well. Once those parts are complete, then we will pass into an invitation for anyone in the audience, and I believe there's someone on Zoom as well, to make any comments that they would like to make regarding this application, either in support or against the applicant. We will ask that you stay as concise as you can so we can hear as many people as possible. Also, do try to speak up a bit because we've got some folks in the hall who are going to want to hear and may not be able to hear. We have around this table all read every word of every letter that has come our way. So do not fear that those points have not been heard and understood. They have. So if you would, again, therefore, try to stay as concise as possible, we'd appreciate it. Also bear in mind that we have to, as council, consider this application on the merits of of planning instruments that we have. So when we're talking about it ourselves, we will be restricted to discussing the planning instrument merits. And I would ask that you can understand that that is our principal way of determining these outcomes ourselves. And finally, and most importantly, please be as peaceful and respectful in your comments as you can. Treat the application with the same degree of dignity as you expect us to treat the application. That would be greatly appreciated by all. So with that, I think if we could have a mover and a seconder to go into the, oh, and sorry, just before I go on, after that wraps up, we will exit the public meeting, go back into our regular portion of council, and that is when council members will have an opportunity to debate amongst ourselves. And at that point, there will be no further interaction or comments with the public. It will be a session just for council. All right. So you're welcome to stay, but not to participate. All right. So with that, could I please have a mover and a seconder to move into the public meeting? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry, be resolved council adjourns its regular meeting at 9:03 a.m. to proceed into a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment application HZBA 924, part of lot 15, concession 8, geographic township of Stanhope for Kegel.
All in favor? That's carried. Mr. O'Callaghan, welcome. And would you like to present us with your report, please?
Thank you. Good morning, Deputy Mayor and Council. So the subject lands are zoned shoreline residential 2 and designated, oh, sorry. So the lands are zoned shoreline residential 2 and designated rural under the rural and waterfront under the official plan. The property is approximately 5.8 acres in area with 110 meters of frontage on an unnamed right of way. The surrounding uses are generally shoreline residential, rural, recreational, commercial, and industrial. The lands are currently developed with several accessory structures and a hobby farm. The principal dwelling was recently razed by fire, and the applicants are in the process of rebuilding. A bylaw complaint regarding the hobby farm was received by staff and staff investigated the matter accordingly. The applicants had believed their property to be zoned rural and were in compliance with the zoning bylaw. However, staff investigation into the matter determined the property was in fact zoned shoreline residential 2, where a hobby farm is not a permitted use. This application before you is proposing to rezone the lands to rural with an exception. The exception would eliminate the following permitted uses of the rural zone: a portable asphalt plant, commercial kennel, and a group home. The RU's exception zone would allow for the hobby farm use to remain and for the accessory dwelling to be constructed in the future. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website and circulated to all prescribed agencies. Several letters of objection and support have been received and are attached to the staff report circulated to council. Since the publication of the agenda, there were some additional letters that did come forward, so I will read those for council's information. This is from Brandon Monroe and Terry Ingram Monroe. Dear Sean, I'm writing to formally lodge my complaint regarding the proposed rezoning of the property located at 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road. As a resident, property owner, community member in the vicinity, I am strongly opposed and have serious concerns about the impact this rezoning could have on our lake and community. The proposed rezoning from SR2 to RU raises several issues that I believe have not been adequately addressed. The first is impact on property values. Changing the zoning to RU may negatively affect the property values in the area. Many residents have invested significantly in our homes and cottages based on the existing zoning, and a shift in zoning could lead to a decline in the desirability and value of our properties. Environmental concerns. The proposed rezoning may lead to increased pollution, noise, smell, and negatively impact the lakes and green spaces. Our community has a strong commitment to maintaining our environment, and this rezoning appears to be in direct conflict with these values. Impact to the lake. Numerous studies have indicated farms located near lakes do pose significant environmental concerns. And for compatibility with the existing community, the proposed zoning change is not in keeping with the character of our neighborhood, which is primarily a lake community with cottages and residential homes. Introducing an RU designation would alter the fabric of our lake community in a way that is unwelcome and potentially harmful. Lack of public consultation. Many residents feel that there has been insufficient opportunity for public input on this matter, only given 20 days instead of the industry standard of 30 days. One sign posted in the neighborhood with only 20 days notice, no letters sent to residents, no posting in local papers. I urge the planning department to extend the consultation period and provide more opportunities for the community to voice their concerns. Given these objections, I respectfully request that the planning department reconsider the proposed rezoning and take into account the potential negative consequences for our community. I strongly believe that preserving the current zoning is in the best interest of the residents and the future of our lake community neighborhood. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I look forward to your response and hope that your concerns will be seriously considered in the final decision. This next letter is from Ruth Monroe Oldham. I'm writing to formally express my opposition to the proposed rezoning of the property at 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road. As a longtime property owner in this area, I'm deeply concerned about the potential impact this rezoning could have on our lake, its wildlife, fish populations, and our community. Changing the zoning from SR2 to RU raises several significant issues. I'm wondering if the planning department conducted the necessary studies to evaluate the potential impacts. An environmental impact study and a water impact study should have been completed before the proposal was even considered. Halls Lake has several spawning areas for smallmouth bass and trout, many of which are located along the shoreline in front of my property and the property in question. Our lake is recognized as a natural heritage feature as indicated in Schedule C for other wildlife, some of which are considered endangered. Changing the zoning to RU would negatively affect these areas. Any activities like establishing a hobby farm could impact the lake, especially since a stream runs through the property and empties directly into the lake. Again, let me stress, I am disappointed that the planning department has not fully reviewed all sections of their official plan, which clearly indicate that an RU designation should not have even been considered in this case. Given these concerns, I respectfully request that council reject the proposed rezoning, consider the potential negative consequences for our community. I firmly believe that maintaining the current zoning is in the best interest of the lake, its wildlife, the residents, and the future of our lake community. And I request that this letter be read at the council meeting. This next letter is from Elaine Burbidge. I would like to make a few points to be read at the meeting on the 5th. I am a landowner on Halls Lake and have been here a very long time. I am shocked and dismayed at what I am reading from some of the letters and documents provided by the landowner that were available from the township site. There are many inconsistencies and twisting of facts. This property in question has always been residential. At no time was it ever anything else. There were good reasons for this. The property is close to the lake and has a stream that runs through it and always has. How will the township deal with damage to the lake and to the groundwater? Everyone up here gets their water from either the lake or a well. If that is compromised, what happens next? Not to mention the effect on the trout and bass, the loons and ducks, and now our eagles. You have before you letters with facts and supporting documents against this application, so I'm not going to restate all of the supporting facts why this land must remain zoned SR2. As our governing body, you must protect our water and our land. In the request for the change, it states that the property owner wants a second dwelling and a garden. Neither of these require an RU designation. Can we not work together, keep the property as SR2 and figure a way forward? So I express my opposition to the proposed rezoning. This next letter is from Celine Duguay. This letter is in addition to the letter my husband and I have already submitted on August 28th to oppose the proposed amendment. I would ask that the additional letter be part of the public record. Given I will not be able to attend the September 5th regular meeting in person and comment, I would like to raise the additional points. Mr. Kegel mentioned in his cover letter that he had a close friend that used to be a prominent figure in the Ministry of Environment, dig test holes on the property. That verbal statement does not validate the requirements of providing an environmental impact assessment that should have been part of the accompanying documents supporting the application. There's also mention a field officer inspected the animals and suggested that after the inspection of the property, we would have to have a dozen chickens and 20 or more pigs to justify even doing calculations of minimum distance separation. I question those numbers given that under the township plan, his land could only accommodate 2 nutrient unit equivalents, which do not tally to dozens of chickens or 20 or more pigs under the minimum distance separation. And it would definitely justify a calculation. Again, where is a written report from that officer that should have accompanied the application as a supporting document? This is from Joanne Perkin. Hi, Sean. I am just letting you know that I strongly feel it is a bad planning decision and I strongly oppose the bylaw amendment from SR2 to RU. Please let my voice of opposition to the zoning bylaw amendment be read at the council meeting on September 5th. Thank you in your sincere effort in this matter. This is from Janet and Bill LaRue. My husband, Bill and I have now read the agenda for the meeting on September 5th, plus the attachments. We note that the application has been amended to request a change to RU with exceptions. The difference from the original application is that it would give up three of the otherwise permitted RU uses, being a temporary asphalt plant, a group home, and a kennel. We would like this letter read aloud at the council meeting. Mr. O'Callahan states in his report that the lands are currently developed with several accessory structures and a hobby farm. The applicants believe their property was zoned rural and therefore in compliance with the zoning bylaw. Staff investigated and determined the property was zoned SR2 and a hobby farm is not permitted. Despite the SR2 designation, the applicant proceeded with accessory buildings and a hobby farm. These activities on the property, having gone on for some years, have caused the relationship with nearby cottagers to deteriorate significantly. This is very unfortunate because good neighbors usually can sort things out among themselves. How to best go forward. We understand there has been a big investment on the property and there is a natural inclination to help someone who has invested such time and money, particularly a local businessman. We also understand the cottagers' concerns about the uses beyond a hobby farm that are allowed under the RU designation, even under RU with exceptions, and we agree with these concerns. We do not believe that any new zoning should include the RU designation. From other interested parties, you will have heard or read about people's concerns, being soil, water, odors, effluent, manure management, etc. In this latter regard, many equestrian centers deal with the same issues with houses nearby and management plans, including concrete pads, carbon or other mixing, and are successfully employed. If council decides to approve this application, we believe it should only include the right to have a hobby farm with strict conditions regarding waste management and a limited number of animals. There should be no additional uses allowed. We ask that we be informed by email of the decision of council. This next letter is from Wilford Doyle. I, Wilford Doyle, am writing, sorry, it's handwritten, my apologies, is writing the Township of Algonquin Highlands in support of Tim Keegle and Laura Keegle of Little Hawk Lake Road in regards to zoning to RU and not lakefront zoning. Next letter is from Alyssa Wood. Dear Sean, I am in support of the zoning change at 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road. As a post-secondary school, I did a co-op that specifically focused on the negative impacts of agriculture on water quality. The professor I worked under did her PhD on water quality as well. The lake that we studied was surrounded by commercial farming. This lake was affected because of the intense agricultural load and lack of buffers around the streams, creeks, rivers that flowed into the lake. It is my strong opinion that a hobby farm will not have a large enough agricultural load to have any significant impact on the water quality in or surrounding Halls Lake. This next letter is from Stephen Barker. Dear Sean, I'm writing to add my support to the zoning change at 1572 Halls Lake Road in Algonquin Highlands from SR2 to RU. From Susie Keegle, I'm in complete support of the zoning change at 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road from SR2 to RU. I have lived year round. Sorry, I can't read the address. The property was severed for Karen and John Guyette and their family. When they moved, Tim and his family took residence. Unfortunately, that home burned to the ground in April. I have never been bothered by any objectionable odor or activity from the property. Tim and Laura are very respectable neighbors. This next letter is from Philip Primavera. I'm writing to express my support for the zoning change application submitted by Tim and Laura Keegle at their property. The applicants have recently discovered that their property, which they have always understood to be zoned rural, is currently zoned shoreline residential 2. This discovery came as a surprise to them, especially since the property was previously zoned as rural residential. After discussing this matter with the town planner, it was recommended that they apply for a zoning change to RU, which is in line with their expectations and the property's characteristics. I believe that the proposed zoning change is reasonable and appropriate for the following reasons. One, historical context. The property was initially zoned as RR and later changed to SR2 without the homeowner's awareness. Reverting to RU would restore the zoning to a more appropriate and expected classification. Two, property characteristics. The property's current use aligns with rural zoning designation. The rural zone would better reflect the intended use and character of the property and surrounding area. Impact on the community. The zoning change would not adversely affect the local community. On the contrary, it would align with the existing land use and maintain the rural character of the neighborhood. In conclusion, I support Tim and Laura and their application for a zoning change to RU and believe that this change will benefit not only the property owners, but also the surrounding community by ensuring that the zoning regulations reflect the area's actual use and character. And this is the last letter. Hello, Sean. I support the zone change from SR2 to RU at 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road. Any smell from the pigs when they are there is minimal and only apparent when at the pig pen. Laura and Tim did their research and would not do anything to harm the environment. And that's from Gloria Wheeler. So, I would note that staff had also contacted the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness and the Ministry of Rural Affairs with respect to the proposal, and they did note that there were no concerns from that ministry with respect to the proposal. My recommendation in my report was for approval, but given the amount of concerns that have been raised, I would suggest that council defer the application so that some of those concerns could be addressed.
And what sort of actions would you suggest be taken between now and a subsequent consideration of the file?
So there have been a lot of environmental concerns raised. So I think having an environmental impact study completed and further consultation with the ministry, I think that could adequately address the concerns that have been raised and bring that information back to council for further consideration.
Now, do council members have any questions for Sean at this point? No. I have a couple that I'd like to run past you, Sean, if that's all right. I have sorry, just scooping over here. I'd like a better sense of the zoning in the official plan versus the zoning in the zoning bylaw, the comprehensive zoning bylaw that we have. It sounds like there might be some confusion between those two and how they interact. I wonder if you might explain for clarity how they work together. Certainly.
So the official plan designates the property as partially waterfront and partially rural. The official plan typically, or it says generally lands within 150 meters of a water body would be part of that waterfront designation, whereas some of the lands fall outside of that. But it was also noted that it's lands generally within that distance. So it's not a hard number. And then we go to zoning where the property zone shoreline residential 2 in its entirety and has no rural zoning on there currently.
Okay. Now I appreciate the language used is that it is a general difference or a general use within 150 meters. Do we know the livestock portion of this property, whether it's within that 150 meters of the waterfront or whether it's beyond the 150 meters, if the property in fact covers both?
So the zoning bylaw that's been drafted would be for the entire property. But My understanding is the farm portion is mostly directed towards the northern section, with the homes and accessory structures being developed in the southerly portion of the property, where it's adjacent to the waterfront parcels of land.
Okay, yeah. Lisa.
Just sort of following up on that, if we are in support of an environmental impact study or assessment, if the zoning is changed to rural, can there be a site plan put in place with the layout of where the animals are and sort of the runoff, that type of thing in that zoning change?
So we wouldn't be able to put the property under site plan control, but a site plan could be attached to the zoning bylaw, so it would have a similar effect. But we would need to work with the applicant to determine exactly where that farm use would be restricted to, because it is a smaller property. I mean, it is a larger acreage, but the area where they could have agriculture and the dwelling or the dwellings, we would need to make sure it would all still be satisfactory to the applicant and their plans.
Thank you.
Sean, what is the ability of the municipality to control things like animal waste, the use of pesticides, fertilizers on anyone's property in any designation for that matter?
So my understanding is with respect to manure, I mean, there's nutrient units is what the ministry defines being allowed on certain properties. So for a property of this size, they would be restricted to what's considered 2 nutrient units around there. So depending on what the animals are, just as an example, 3.5 pigs, I think it is, equals 1 nutrient unit. 8 goats equals 1 nutrient unit. So there's that control, but as far as pesticide use, I'm not sure we have any, I'm not aware of any bylaws that we have, at least at the township level, that would restrict that.
Do you know, do municipalities in Ontario have the authority to enact such bylaws to control pesticide and fertilizers within certain zones or radiuses of water bodies?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I'd have to investigate that further.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but good to follow up on for further study. Now I'm curious to know what the implications could be for the property. Say, for example, should the applicant decide to sell in future years? Now this property is designated as rural. There is an expanded list of things that could be done on that property. Any thoughts? Do you have any thoughts to offer on whether a potential future owner could quite easily change it into something else, or perhaps expand the agricultural space beyond what is currently suggested, so that there's more of a commercial agricultural feel about it, perhaps more pesticides? Any thoughts on further years ahead and implications for the property?
I mean, if the property were to sell, the zoning would stay with the property, but they would be restricted to whatever the zoning bylaw allows at that time. So if in this case, the rural exception zone that's being put forward has eliminated a lot of the more controversial uses, I think the remaining use of most impact is the hobby farm, just based on the comments council's heard. So any future owner would still be restricted to whatever hobby farm restrictions in our zoning exist.
Okay. Yeah. Now, should council decide to agree with your recommendation to defer pending further study, presumably this will come up, but there are apparently unassessed wetlands on the property. Are you able at this time to speak to that at all? What unassessed wetlands mean, etc., or is that something that you'd prefer to come back?
I think the environmental impact assessment would adequately address that. The one comment I would make is that there's a very small EP designation, but my understanding is the agricultural operation does not occur in that portion of the property.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Richards.
Would the environmental impact assessment take into consideration the topography of the land sloping down towards other properties that have septic beds all on them that then further slope down into the lake?
That's certainly something we can have discussions with the consultant on to see if the study.
I'm sorry, if everyone would kindly turn off their telephones, that would be just great. And I apologize for not having raised that before.
So yes, we could have that discussion with the consultant to see if that's something that they could scope the report to address.
Yeah, please.
Can you talk to me about precedent that this would set around the lake? Should further residential properties that are not fronting on the lake seek an RU designation? Would we be obligated in any way to allow those properties as well to have the RU designation and end up with 20, 50 hobby farms thereafter surrounding Halls Lake, surrounding septics going into Halls?
So there would be no precedent set by this application. Each application would need to be evaluated on its own merits and against our planning policies of the day.
Yeah, Councillor Barry.
I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but in the application, it's changed to not include the asphalt plant, the commercial kennel, the group home. That would stay if the property was sold, that would still remain not in excess of,
Yes, that is correct.
Councillor Richards.
Given that we know that the SR2 designation was not established by the township, but it was established by the OMB decision from the prior case that was held. What does that OMB decision to zone it as SR2 have any impact on our decision? Are we allowed to overrule the OMB in zoning it as SR2?
Yes, so the zoning is not locked into place as a result of that decision. So a property owner could come forward at any time to rezone their property. So.
Any further questions of the planner at this time? In that case, I might ask if the applicant or the agent of the applicant would like to make any comments.
If you're going to speak, yeah, get up here.
Okay. Welcome. If you would kindly state your name and your address.
Tim Kegel, 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road.
Great. And
I
just make
sit
sure
down?
that's, yes, please sit down and make sure your microphone is still on. I can't see it. Great.
All right. The mayor, council, staff, and public of Algonquin Highlands. Halls Lake has been my home for 35 years. I swim in the lake, I fish in the lake, summer and winter. I eat fish from the lake. I water my gardens from the lake. I taught my kids to swim in this lake. I even taught some of your kids to swim and water ski in this lake. I've spent more time on and in this lake than most of the people here. I would like to address a few of the things that I was not able to say in my letter or things I would like to emphasize. 1, 33 feet, about the length of this room, probably a little bit less. Our property abuts 100 acres of RU property and much more RU property around the lake. Some with property lines much closer to the lake than us. 2, many of the people contesting here have RU zoning abutting their property now. A few actually own RU property that abut our own property. 3, there have been no complaints of smell any other year. We have raised pigs except this year. And this year, we don't have pigs. There is no stream or creek that runs through our property, none. And I'm going to repeat this again so everyone that was lied to and lied on their letters can hear me. There is no stream or creek that runs through our property. 5. There has been no complaints by any of the cottagers at Shalom. On the contrary, they love walking through our property, and we welcome hundreds each year to do so. Both adults and children love to come and feed the pigs, chickens, learn about the honeybees, and check out our garden and our apple orchard. Never has any cottager complained about the smell or the noise. There is no environmental concern. I talked with an environmental consultant yesterday that commented that this property does not warrant an environmental impact study. It would actually be pointless. As a hobby farm, we are governed by the Ministry of the Environment and the Ministry of Agriculture, which has strict guidelines that must be followed. He also commented that this assessment would be best carried out by an agricultural officer. We have already had one of these officers to the property who said we were not doing anything wrong and had no concerns about the impact of the lake. If the council thinks it would help support this decision, I would suggest I contact a nutrient management consultant that can comment on our property, though I know the answer will be the same as the last officer that came. This is not an environmental concern. This is a few neighbors concerned of change, stirring up other neighbors and spreading lies, rumors, and other things from the past that have no place in this discussion. If they cared about the lake as much as they pretend, they wouldn't have a cottage with a septic 50 to 100 feet from the lake. They wouldn't have motorboats. They wouldn't cut their grass and pull the weeds from the shoreline. They would let nature take over and allow things to grow back to the way they used to be. The fact is, most of us care about the lake to the degree we are comfortable affecting it. Some care more about their cottages, their toys, and perfectly manicured lawns than they do about our lake.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kegel, I'm going to ask you to remain on the subject of your application and not on your neighbors. Just to respect your neighbors, as I'm going to ask them to respect you.
Okay.
Thank you.
That is why we have organizations that govern what is acceptable harm to our environment. The same organizations that tell us how close we can have a septic to the lake is the same organization that tells me that there is nothing wrong with me having a hobby farm. If people contesting think that these organizations are wrong, then they should also question whether they are wrong about their own property. This reminds me of a saying from my favorite book. Why do you see the speck that is in your neighbor's eye, but not notice the log in your own eye? If the neighbors could be honest about their concerns, I would address them, and I would work with them in a loving way to come to a compromise, but they are not being honest about these concerns. If they were, we would not be here today. When my parents moved here 35 years ago, they fought a stigma that was attached to this property. The stigma was created by the previous generation. It took my parents 20 years or more to win the acceptance of most of these neighbors. They became a cornerstone of this community by starting a church, running a kids program, and so much more. They are now congratulated on what they have accomplished and done for this community. The worst part of all this is what it's doing to our community and what we are teaching the next generation. We should be teaching our kids to encourage diversity, support our neighbors, love our neighbors, make decisions based on facts and not blindly following others. To my neighbors, I know change can be difficult when you don't know what's coming, and I think this is possibly where some of the worry lies. I kindly welcome you to call me at any time to arrange a tour of our property to show you what we have done and our plans for the future. Thank you and the township employees for your support. I will respect your decision. I may not agree with your decision. It may not stop fighting, but I will show you in this township respect.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anything further you would like to add, either of you, or? Then I'd like to open questions up to council for the applicant. Any questions at all? No. Thank you for your time very much. Yeah, okay, yes,
Yeah.
one question from Councillor Richards.
I think you've probably done a great deal of research yourself on having a hobby farm, and the operations you currently have there. I would expect you to do so. What is your current plan? You've had pigs before.
Mhm.
So what is your current plan for disposal of excrement from them on your property?
So I read through years ago, I can't remember the name of it, it's on my other letter, but about 150-page document with nutrient management. I have lots of friends that have hobby farms and large farms in the area. Keep in mind that this is just a hobby farm, and like Sean said, I'm actually now, since, or hopefully soon be about 6.2 acres, but I'll still be limited to nutrients. Which allows me to have, approximately 7 pigs and some laying hens, and it depends on the type of animal that you have, which we may change from year to year. We don't keep livestock all year round, so right now we basically do a cycle just through 6 months, and our initial plan, and still our plan, is to basically have a 3 or 4 pen system. So every year they're on new ground, which is better for the pigs. It's better for the ground. It allows any waste to dissipate from year to year. So you don't have a concentrated spot on your property all at one time. We actually plan to build our secondary house within about 100 feet of where this pen system would be, with a well about 100 feet from where the pigs will be. So if anyone has an impact on it, it's going to be us in the future, and we're going to do a good job to manage that, being right beside our residents. But to answer your question, we plan on following the rules that the Ministry of Agriculture have been put in place to best manage it. And if a smell arises and there's an issue with the neighbors, then we're someone that we're not out there to make enemies and disrupt people's summer vacations. If it means that 7 pigs is too much and we do 2 the next year, then that's something that we will do. But it's all managed by the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment.
So I guess a follow-up to that would be with respect to the waste specifically, the excrement specifically.
Yeah.
What does the ministry say you can do, and what do you do to manage that?
So the ministry, we don't really fall within the size of the property or enough animals to even warrant what's called a nutrient management plan. So a hobby farm is so small that the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment think that there's almost no impact to surrounding properties and lakes, that they actually don't require us to have a nutrient management plan. So that is essentially our plan from talking with farmers and the AE officer that came out. He was happy with what we were doing, which is a lot better than what most people do. Yeah.
And what is it that you do, out of curiosity?
We basically have a 4-pen system. So basically the manure doesn't move. So it stays in the pen that they were in year 1, and then they move to year 2. So it basically stays on that land.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And I'd like to stress that the lay of the land, because I know a lot of the people contesting it, have all of these views of runoff and stuff like that, but none of them have actually ever been on the property, or very few of them. Because I've always welcomed them on the property to walk through the forest that we have there, and the trails, some of the trails that we still have, and the trails that we had in the past. There's almost no chance of runoff, because in the section of the property that you could have livestock and agriculture, we're kind of in a divot. And I specifically designed the property to be in that divot. So I haven't been out with the transit line to see exact numbers, but our property is almost like a bowl where all of this is done. And you would raise up about, a foot to the hillside, 30 feet before water could get out. So it's practically impossible. And another reason why the Ministry of Agriculture and the officer that came out had no issues with the property. Yeah, because that's one of the things that they do look for. But yeah, there was no concerns whatsoever.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Any further questions of the applicant then? Right, well, thank you very much for your submission, and you're very welcome to go back and take a
Perfect.
seat.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask if there are any members of the public who would like to step forward and offer their remarks. Do we follow this particular list? Okay, so we're going to follow this list and then open it up to others. And we also have a number of people online who may want to speak. So we do have quite a number of folk wishing to speak. So please do keep, as I say, keep your comments as concise as you can. Wonderful. So we've got Sherry Law. Laura, please come on up. And if you wouldn't mind at the microphone stating your name and your address, that would be great. And do have a seat so we can hear you on the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Sherry Lohr, and I live at 1041 Deacons Trail in Algonquin, Highlands.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Deputy Mayor, Council, staff, Tim and Laura. Our property is directly adjacent to Tim and Laura's at 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road. And I am here to articulate the objections of the near 100 property owners who have expressed their deep concern about this proposed zoning change. I'm going to try to edit my speech as we go along, given everything that has been said so far, so bear with me. But by now, I'm sure you are aware of the fact that this is not just a group of grumpy vacationers with a 5 to 10 year plan. My family is third and fourth generation on Halls Lake along Deacons Trail, and this is my permanent home. We, like most of the people here, are around either all year long or for a good portion of it. We are a lakefront community. These are my friends, my family, and my relatives, my neighbors. And we, like the applicant, contribute to our local economy through our taxes. We support local businesses, donate to charities. I, along with many of the people here today, donate my time. For us, whether we are cottagers or full-time residents, this place is home. Sometimes it's important to speak up, and this isn't one of those times. This bylaw amendment to change the zoning to SR2 to rural is a poor planning decision, and we strongly oppose it. So how did we get to this point? I'd like to offer a little bit of context for perspective. The applicants have indicated in their application that their SR2 zoned current property use is residential. However, they have established a hobby farm, as you've heard, with animals, stored and used industrial equipment, cut down large numbers of trees, recently dumped debris along the hydro right-of-way, which raises a huge concern among residents. And the tipping point for this was where we got to. This was a significant issue because for many, it created a concern about a forest fire hazard. And by the way, these issues were raised numerous times, and also an attempt was made to go and see Mr. Cagle about this particular situation. And in the past, people have tried to approach the Cagles about situations such as the plastic toxic burning.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask that you edit any character comments out. We really must stick to the planning
I
application.
agree. You're
Thank you very
correct.
much.
Sorry, I apologize. Initially, the township bylaw officers dismissed the complaints, the original complaints. However, after a few appeals to those complaints, the bylaw officers and planner came to a site meeting on Cary Close on the 28th of June this year. At that meeting, they were surprised to learn from several of us present that the Cagle property was in fact SR2. At first, they argued it was RU, But they referred back to their zoning bylaw, which is available online and has been for 10 years, and discovered that in fact it really was SR2. We have the documentation that clearly shows that in 1977 it was zoned residential, and this was confirmed as SR2 by the OMB in 1986. And that was 3 years before Tim's parents, Susie and Joe, purchased that property. It has never been anything but residential. So there seems to be a bit of a disconnect. Following that meeting, the bylaw office decided to reopen the case. But instead of addressing the existing bylaw violations, it seems the solution was to ask the owners or have the owners rezoned to RU. It's important to note that while perhaps innocent intent, ignorance of the bylaws is not a valid planning reason to seek rezoning. In a letter hand-delivered to a few neighbors by Tim Cagle on the 26th of July, 10 days before submitting, 10 days following submitting their application, he outlined the numerous bylaw infractions, including operating a hobby farm and their plan for the future, which clearly states the intent to have a hobby farm with 5 to 6 pigs because they discovered 8 was too many. This was not disclosed in the initial application submitted on July 16th, but was later mentioned in an undated letter to council. He claims that he had been told on 3 occasions by township staff that his plans were feasible. Unfortunately, there's no substantiating records of this. The hand-delivered letter also mentioned that according to as Tim mentioned, an expert field officer from the Ministry of Environment, that having 8 pigs was not a problem, that the MDS guidelines allowed him 20 pigs plus dozens of chickens before they even needed to worry about the MDS guidelines. However, no such report has been provided. So, where is the proof? According to several official plan requirements, studies should have been submitted in 9162. It says the applicant should have been encouraged by the township to submit all necessary information. So we appreciate the fact that Sean O'Callaghan has noted that a study should be done. So we asked the planner on a couple of different occasions where the documentation was, and he admitted that there were none. And by the way, the MDS guidelines are monitored by the Ministry of Agriculture, not Environment. Currently, the property is still zoned SR2. And if the rezoning to RU is approved, the MDS guidelines refers back to the AH bylaws, which indicate he can only have 2 nutrient units, as has been pointed out, based on their acreage. And I'm not even going to try to outline, as a couple of people already have, that possibly translates, what that actually translates into actual livestock, because we really do need to have a proper analysis by the Ministry of Agriculture to determine that. We engaged David Stewart, a recently retired urban planner, to do a peer review of the rezoning application and related documents. He found that the Algonquin Highlands OP has clear policies with respect to compatibility and adequate buffering of agriculture uses, such as a hobby farm, and in this case, specifically the neighboring properties on Halls Lake. Under 5346 of the OP, it states that agricultural lots must be of sufficient size to accommodate the proposed uses. It must avoid impact on the environment and negative impact on ground and surface water quality. 5347 says adequate setbacks and buffers will be maintained on agricultural properties along property lines to ensure compatibility with abutting uses. In this case, it's cottages and permanent residents along the shore of Halls Lake. David Stewart was also puzzled why under 5221, the applicant was not required to apply for an official plan amendment in conjunction with this application, and yet one was not submitted. The applicants plan to move their pigs, as you just heard, to new locations each year, which raises concerns, especially since 90% of the property is currently designated as waterfront and only 10% as rural. The westerly Cagle property line along Deacon's Trail is less than 70 meters from the shores of Halls Lake, and there is a concern about groundwater seepage on the property on both Deacon's Trail and Carey Close. So, how will the township enforce that the pigs are kept out of that 150-meter zone? The property is only 2.3 hectares, and despite what we've just heard, there is spring runoff, which goes into a creek, which ends up in Halls Lake. It is at the back of the property in that 10% designated rural area. This is a huge concern for us because that spring runoff does go directly into the lake, but also leakage of excrement into the groundwater from livestock will eventually reach both the lake and the wells on the surrounding properties, affecting our only source of clean drinking water. Even with my limited science, I know that manure runs downhill. And if manure is processed properly, we would barely smell it, but I'm going to let others address the overwhelming smell. And thank you, Sean, for bringing forward today that you contacted the Ministries of Agriculture and Environment, because we really do need those reports from the MDS, from the Ministry of Environment regarding the waters situation, and also agriculture for the MDS studies. We've been told by the AH planner that the property in question doesn't technically touch waterfront, and therefore it is was zoned in error. We were also told that under the OP land use maps, part of the property along the back is actually zoned rural. But if you look at the Algonquin Highlands official plan maps, that equates to 10% of the overall property, while 90% is classified as waterfront. Why on earth would 10% define the remaining 90%? This does not seem like a good planning decision, and I, like many, am perplexed. A letter from Haliburton County dated August 22nd, which was made public 2 days ago, supports the promotion of agricultural related uses, but emphasizes adherence to the Algonquin Highlands official plan and zoning bylaws and the MDS guidelines. Halls Lake, as you've heard and will hear again, I'm sure, is home to our unique prehistoric golden lake trout. We are, after all, a spawning lake as identified by Haliburton County and verified by numerous local and provincial environmental groups. The official plan under 421 specifies that adjacent lands must be 120 meters contiguous to significant natural heritage features and be within the perimeter, including fish habitats. That puts this property directly in the middle of that zone. Several concerned property owners, including Terry Moore from Environment Haliburton and Ted and Elaine Burbage, who are our lake stewards, have already raised some of these specific concerns. I think it's safe to say that we all support hobby farming, and most of us along Deacon's Trail, if not all of us, have very deep roots in farming. As an example, Frank and Patty Ingram both grew up on farms, and they live, when they're not at Halls Lake, in the middle of a farming community. Will LaRue, who is next door to him, not only lives on a farm, he is the manager of an equestrian farm. So if anything, our collective knowledge has made us hyper aware of the necessary precautions to operate a farm. Our opposition is to this property's proximity to the lake and the effect of the groundwater. So we urge you, Council, as Sean O'Callaghan has already indicated, to seek proper in-depth studies from the Ministry of Natural Resources, Forestries and Fisheries and the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change on the impact this proposed change and all it encompasses on this specific plot of land will have, given its proximity to Halls Lake, the unevaluated wetlands, and the impact on neighboring properties. In addition, we would like to see a report from the Ministry of Agriculture on the MDS guidelines as they pertain directly to this property. We are willing to collaborate with the Township and the applicants to find a solution that addresses everyone's concerns and wishes. We are not villains, nor do we think that the applicants are. We are all part of this community. Given all you've heard, we strongly urge you, our representatives, to take a sober second thought and reject this proposal to rezone from SR2 to RU. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Thank you for your statement. Please have a seat. We now have Frank Ingram. Would Frank like to make a statement? And Frank, if on the microphone, if you would confirm your name and your address, that would be
My
great.
name is Frank Ingram from 1025 Beacon Trail, Halls Lake.
Great, thank you. Do have a seat, and if many of your points have been covered, I would ask that you,
I'll stick right to it
Okay.
and that's all.
Okay.
I was just expecting just to present, not to have the letter read previously to this, so it's, but I really do want to present.
thank you.
Again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak regarding the proposed rezoning of 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road from shoreline residential to rural. As Sherry mentioned, my name is Frank Ingram and Patty is my wife. We are strongly opposed to this proposed amendment to the rezoning of this property. We reside at 1025 Deacon Trail on Halls. Our cottage was built by Patty's grandfather in 1933. Our 4 granddaughters represent the 5th generation to enjoy this cottage. Patty and I are seasonal residents who have lived here 6 months of the year for the past 15 years. We consider the Township of Algonquin Highlands our home, even more so than our home in the city of Kawartha Lakes. We're proud to be part of the Halls Lake community and are proud of our family heritage within that community. It is our understanding that the present owner is considering the establishment of a hobby farm, including pigs. Our property abuts 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road. Pigs were raised on this property during the summer of 2023 and some before, I understand. We were subjected to the distinct and pungent odor of pig manure throughout the season. There were even times when the offensive smell was so intrusive that we had to go inside the cottage, close our windows, and wait for the smell to dissipate. We don't deserve history to repeat itself here. Don't get me wrong. We both grew up on family farms. But those farms were in a rural area. They weren't in the middle of a lake community. We just want our 4 granddaughters to be able to enjoy the quality of life that the lake and cottage have given us and our families for the past 91 years. In conclusion, I respectfully ask council and Sean to keep the zoning of 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road classified as shoreline residential 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Are there, just before you go, are there any questions from council for Mr. Ingram? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ingram.
Thank you.
We do have quite a number of people wishing to speak. So just bear that in mind. Matthew Toole.
I have comments and queries that have been addressed by Sean Staturlo, by the letters presented, and I have some questions.
Thank you. I'll just repeat for the microphone that the comments that he wishes to raise have already been covered by others. Great. In which case, Beth Carey.
Hi.
Thank you.
Well, slides. It's on wheels. Hi, my name is Beth Carey and I'm at 1118 Old Mill Road.
Thank you.
So let me speak, I'm going to speak a bit quickly to the environment, very short. So research, and I've done a lot of research, supports that excess nutrients and sediment can degrade wetlands, lakes, lake habitats, harming native plants, fish, and wildlife. Pig and chicken waste, even in very small amounts, contain high levels of nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. This process, where the environment becomes over-enriched with nutrients, leads to algae bloom, and that deplete oxygen in the water and is harmful to aquatic life. During the spring runoff, or when we have a lot of rain, which we all remember those seasons, many of the properties along Carey Close and Deacon's Trail deal with large rivulets running through the properties and right into the lake. Most of the water passes through the property in question. It is also important to note that there is a stream that flows during the spring and during a series of rainy days,
right through the property and directly into the lake. Pathogens like viruses and bacteria such as Salmonella and E. coli live several months in manure. This could result in contamination of surface and groundwater, as it did in Walkerton. This property is made up mainly of sandy soil. Due to the large pore space in sandy soil, pathogens such as nitrogen and phosphorus will drain quickly into the groundwater, ultimately contaminating the lake, not to mention nearby wells. Fish are also subject to contamination from these pathogens, which are found in the manure, leading to a loss of biodiversity. The loss and contamination of our fish and their habitat directly impacts our wildlife. Sherry's already mentioned about the halibut and gold, the trout. There's also impact on our ducks, our eagles, our otters, our herons, our turtles, and our loons, just to name the obvious, all of whom rely on the lake, the wetlands, and the fish. Halls Lake supports numerous species of wildlife. Why do we put them at risk? Why are we willing to jeopardize our environment, our ground and lake water, our fish, ducks, eagles, because someone wants to have a hobby farm on the property which is so close to the lake? Remember, this is not a livelihood. It's a mere want to have. What is the legacy that this council is willing to leave?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Shelley Fellows, please come and have a seat.
Good morning. Good morning, Deputy Mayor, members of council, administration, property owners. My name's Shelley Fellows. I'm at 1981 Big Hawk Lake Road. I'm also the president of the Halls and Hawk Lakes Property Owners Association. The HHLPOA, that's our acronym, has a core mandate to preserve and enhance the lands and waters around the lakes and watersheds of Halls Lake, Big Hawk Lake, and Little Hawk Lake. This mandate aligns well with the official plan of Algonquin Highlands Township, which itself seeks to align environmental sustainability and responsibility with public health and safety. With respect to the zoning amendment request under consideration, and without prejudice to the property owner, the primary concern of the HHLPOA is that many of the activities permitted under an RU zone could result in contamination of local water courses with fecal material, herbicides, pesticides, fertilizer, and other toxic chemicals like embalming fluid. The permitted activities include farming with livestock, equestrian facility, dog kennel, commercial greenhouse, and cemetery. The subject land is located within 230 feet of a watercourse, as are many properties adjacent to and near the major water bodies of Big Hawk, Little Hawk, the Kanesis River, and Halls Lake. Our lands are crisscrossed by creeks, vernal ponds, and hillsides, over which the spring freshet runs, all leading to one or more of our major water bodies. These water courses are used for drinking water and recreation, and a substantial portion of HHLPOA activities and our annual budget are devoted to preservation and monitoring of water quality. The Provincial Ministry of the Environment D-Series guidelines referenced in Algonquin Highlands Township bylaws outline land use compatibility guidelines. Any watercourse within 230 feet or 70 meters of the above permitted activities lies within a potential influence area. With respect to adverse effects from any activity, in particular, the large-scale activities permitted under the RUs within the Halls and Hawk Lakes region of Algonquin Highlands Township. Permitted activities under Zone RU can be expected to result in adverse effects upon health and safety of any person due to contamination of drinking water, recreational water, air, and soil, rendering property, animals, or plant life unfit for use by persons. They could also result in loss of enjoyment of normal use of property by adjacent property owners and certainly in an impairment of the quality of the natural environment we love in our region. Heavy metals, bacteria, forever chemicals, nutrient overloading, in particular with nitrogen and phosphorus, potentially leading to blue-green algae growth. These are all adverse effects and outputs of the list of permitted activities under an RU zone. These have no place happening adjacent to our water courses. We rely on these water courses to provide water that is safe to drink using standard residential sanitation methods and to be safe for our children to swim in. Our mandate as an association is to preserve and enhance our environment, something we take very seriously. RU zoning will permit large-scale activities that will degrade and permanently harm our environment. Further, the adverse effects which are likely to result from the permitted activities under an RU zone directly conflict with the stated goals of Algonquin Highlands Township's official plan. As an example of potential negative impact on public health and safety, in the late 1990s, Collingwood's drinking water was contaminated with the bacteria Cryptosporidium from farming activities, resulting in the death of several town residents and the illness of many. They have since managed the safety of their water with investments in water treatment facilities. We can't do that here. One big difference is that residents in our region do not have town supplied water. We are particularly vulnerable to contamination of our water courses and our lands. On behalf of the property owners and members of the Halls and Hawk Lakes POA, and in consideration of our mission to preserve and enhance, we respectfully request that the zoning amendment request under consideration today be declined, and that future requests for rezoning to RU from SR1 or SR2 be automatically declined when the subject property is less than 230 feet or 70 meters from a permanent or vernal watercourse. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Have a seat. Amy Paul, I believe, is next.
Thank you. Hi, thank you. My name's Amy Paul, 1021 Deacons Trail.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to consider my objection of 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road from SR2 to RU zone. I'm a fourth generation resident of Halls Lake and take my role in preserving the quality of life and the integrity of the area for future generations with the utmost of seriousness. Sorry, nervous. For this reason, I was alarmed and concerned when I first became aware of the application and the numerous adverse consequences, intended and unintended, that have potential to radically alter Halls Lake to the detriment of its long-term and new residents, and perhaps most importantly, the natural ecosystem. My grandmother, June Button, often spoke of a similar situation that occurred in the 1970s when an application was put forth to develop a trailer park in the very same area that is being considered for rezoning today. Thankfully, owing to the residents' carefully thought out and detailed objections and the wisdom and vision of council at that time, that application was rejected. The negative consequences of that development were deemed to outweigh any perceived economic benefits. I truly believe the current situation is equivalent. Unfortunately, I can now relate to the stress and anxiety that the previous generation felt as they worked to preserve Halls Lake against the short-sighted and frankly reckless alterations. I know today's residents will take up the mantle with the same passion and judiciousness that previous generations displayed. In short, we are both united and ardent in our objections to the application. Specifically, my objection is that if the application is approved, there is a very real potential that everyday life for the entire lake community will be indelibly altered in a very negative way, all to placate the wishes of one family. I urge the council to carefully consider the potential impact to take air quality, noise levels, and community atmosphere that approving this application would entail. These are precious commodities that once damaged cannot be easily repaired or restored. Halls Lake is a unique and special place, and it is a privilege to be a resident. However, as my grandmother taught me, there are times when residents must come together to ensure that the very essence of the community isn't despoiled for short-term gain and narrow interests. I firmly believe that this is one of those times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kim Kegel? That's you, okay. Yeah. So are there any other people whose names are on the list that would like to speak to the application before I open it up to online? No one further? Yeah, or outside? Right, would you kindly state your name and your address?
Yes, my name is Robert McConnell. I live on Old Mill Road, which is not adjacent to the property in question. I grew up cottaging in the area. I did do a lot of exploring through the properties. One of my good friends, the Stivers, used to own the property adjacent to that, so I know the Kegel property quite well. So the question I have, and this is the biggest thing that is my concern, is the safety issue of having a hobby farm there. We have closed our dump, which is close to the proximity of this property. So now we have a lot of wild animals that have moved from a feeding zone that used to be there. My uncle, which was 2 doors over, used to have a, not like a hobby farm, like a garden. And he very quickly had to abandon that because having that brought in a lot of animals. So the idea that if there's an orchard there, there's apples, there's stuff like that. So we have bears are very enticed by that. We do have now sightings of bears on Old Mill Road, have walked down that road. I've had neighbors jump into my garage because they said, oh, there's a bear on the road, and so forth. So the idea that this could be a safety issue from an animal standpoint coming into the property area, because also the fact that if you have manure, I've been around farms, we've seen pictures of pigs and whatnot. There's a lot of bugs, a lot of other airborne animals and insects that can be brought into the area because of that. If he's moving from area to area with the pens, that's fine because that area is saturated. If you're moving to another area, it means because there was too much in that area that to make it safer for the pigs and whatnot. And I'm not a scientist on this at all, but I can just know because my family did grow up having farms as well. And the management of manure is a big issue. Any farm in Ontario, everybody has to deal with it from pigs, chickens. So there is a standpoint of collecting that, treating it, putting it out on fields to dilute it. We've all seen manure spreaders. So the idea that I'm on the safety side of things from animal standpoint, what it's going to attract to the area. You have kids riding bicycles at the end of the road. We have a very predominant park, which is fantastic. I, at 18 years old, was part of the swim program, teaching 124 kids a day. And they rode their bikes down there. They rode from Little Hawk Lake. They rode from Big Hawk Lake. So now if they have to encompass a bear that's on his way to eat, the child could just slip and fall because they hit the brakes too hard. So this is now something that you're also going to have coyotes, wolves, it's going to multiply. And it's just going to be something that, as animals do, is they're just looking to feed. It's not anything that you can stop. You can't say, oh, we can treat this. This is something that's going to happen. So once that saturation point happens, and then now to counteract that, at one point there used to be a bounty on wolves because in our area in Halls Lake, we had a ton of wild dogs, coyotes, and wolves. And it was an issue. And I remember in 1988, nobody in the area could have a cat because you had wolves, coyotes, and foxes, and myself owning a cat too, foxes standing at the door sniffing because they knew a cat was inside. So now you're now bringing in something that's an easy pinned in mark for them. So my point is I I don't think anybody's touched on it. The environmental issue is one. How about safety for the children that are just moving in the area on bicycles? And anybody can come, and I'd like to do that study. We see at the end of my driveway, 40, 50 kids a day riding their bicycles happily down Old Mill Road. Now they have to encompass that or have to deal with that, let alone the standpoint of bugs, that they're going to be riding along their bikes and, you know, multiple of either mosquitoes, which we know there's becoming a problem with the different diseases the mosquitoes carry. And also the fact that just you're going to have the household bugs that people aren't going to be able to have their doors open, and you're going to be inundated for the quality of life of having airborne insects to deal with. But any questions?
Fine, thank you very much. Please do have a seat. Is there another, two more speakers? Great. And if you would kindly state your name and address, thank you.
My name is Craig Campbell, 1493 Halls Lake Road. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council, for allowing me to speak. As a quick point, you've already heard my letter and my opinion about the application. I just wanted to state that we heard a lot of discussion about Mr. Kegel's intentions, and I'm sure they're honorable and he's trustworthy as to what he wants to do with the property. I've also heard staff base an opinion on his decision on what he wants to do. I just wanted to remind council that the question is with regards to the property and what the zoning would allow for this property. It has nothing to do with Mr. Kegel's intentions. As soon as you allow the zoning that has these uses, it goes forever with the property. And the issue of removing the asphalt plant and other uses from the zoning, someone could easily argue in the future that as soon as you zone it RU, that the intended uses could be brought back in. I understand the planner's recommendation to council that there's not precedent setting, but that's not true. These things are often argued that you've allowed it once, therefore it can be allowed again. It's always used in arguments with regards to these things. So the decision needs to be based upon what does this zoning do with this property? How can it be utilized by other owners? The future, even the existing owner can change his intensification based on the zoning. And with regards to keeping the zoning, the uses in the zoning bylaw, it's so difficult for municipalities to police these things. Often years and multiple resources goes by before any kind of enforcement happens, often brought to trial. The courts are very lenient on decisions on reprimanding these misuses of the zoning, and often allow the zoning or the uses to continue irrelevant of what the zoning limitations are. So unless the council is willing to add a lot more legal resources and policing resources, I don't see how you could ever police this property to make sure he's keeping it in with the suggested minimum setback distances, the allowable amount of nutrient units, these sort of things. They're so difficult to police and control that in my opinion, you just need to maintain the existing use and our existing zoning, and you need to enforce the existing uses under the zoning. He said already he's doing these things and it's against the zoning. Nobody's done anything about it. Years of this has gone by. He said 6 years. What has the municipality done to enforce that? It's an illegal use. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments then. So I believe is that we have one more speaker.
So my name's John Patton. I live at 1200 North Shore Road. I guess my letter didn't get through. I'd just like to read it briefly. It is my experience, though limited, that almost all SR1 and SR2 zone properties have frontage on the lake or lakeshore allowance, and they are often abutted by RU zone properties. This is quite common throughout our county, and as it was previously stated, some of the RU properties are even closer to the actual lakeshore than the current proposed property. And this is why This is why I support the reasonable zoning change at 1572 Little Hawk Lake Road from SR2 to RU. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And with that, if there are no further speaker, oh, yes, please come forward. I'm afraid we'll have to hear from you right at the microphone so we can publicize it. Okay. No one further from in the gallery, in which case, while we do have quite a number of people zoomed in online, I've been told that there's in fact only one person that has registered to speak, and that is Amity Lamb. I wonder if Amity is online and could join us. There we are. I see the screen, but Amity, you are, if you're with us, you're not visible and you're on mute. There she
Hi.
is.
Good morning.
Good morning. If you would kindly confirm your name and your address, please.
Yeah, my name is Amity Lamb, 1033 Kerry Close, and we also have a permanent resident in Little Hawk Lake Road, so we have 2 properties up there. The main thing is a health problem and an E. coli problem. Like Walkerton, May 12, 2000 to May 24th, 7 people die and 2,300 people become really ill. So with the one-off of the manure and the chicken poo-poo, it will contaminate the well and also the lake. That's the main concern for my health and all the residents there too, and the cottages. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So as that is the only online registered participant, I would like to turn it to the applicant and to the planner. If either of you, if any of you have any questions from members of the public or comments based on what you have heard. Okay, so I'm sorry, just comments.
I've got nothing further to add at this point. I think the recommendation for deferral with the additional information previously discussed should address primarily the concerns that have been raised today. So.
Okay, thank you. And do the applicants have any further comments to offer at this stage? All right. So if there are no further comments or questions, we will consider the public portion of the meeting closed. Anyone wishing for a copy of the notice of the decision may request in writing, make that request in writing to the clerk. So I think we'll adjourn the public meeting and go back into our regular session. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Councillor Short, Reid and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Short Reid, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council adjourn the public meeting at 10:27 a.m. and the regular meeting resume.
All in favor? That's carried. So you are welcome to stay for the remainder of this portion, but there will be no further engagement with the public at this stage. So I turn it to members of council. You've heard the recommendations put forth by the, if people are leaving, maybe we'll give them a moment to depart. Yeah. So I believe Sean is coming back in to join us. That'd be great.
I was getting Tim to just stay around the conversation. Okay.
Okay. Sean, would you like to join us at the table? Having listened to everything that's come before us today, it does appear that there are lots of things on people's mind. and they tend to fall into a few main categories. The environment being a significant concern for a lot of folk. I do understand very, very much how concerning these sorts of changes are. And I think concern over the environment is a very healthy thing and a good thing. And it's something that we here at the township also share. To always be thinking about, our lands and our lakes and our rivers. Happily, when it comes to the environment, we have science to help us understand the real life environmental implications on files such as this. So I personally am very much in favor of Mr. O'Callaghan's recommendation that we dig a bit deeper so that those kinds of questions can be resolved whichever way they come, and that we all have access to an official set of comments from experts on those environmental concerns. So thank you one and all, applicants and public speakers, for your comments on that. And I certainly believe that's a strong way of going forward with an EIA. Were other concerns mentioned today that have more to do with planning applications and planning instruments. And happily there too, we do have in-house experts who guide us through these things. So what our planner brings to the table as being possible should and is considered by this council as very much what we are in power of doing. So that, again, happily has a source of expertise which we rely on. The piece that is a little bit more difficult is the compatibility with local land use, because this is often a social thing. It's a social construct as much as anything else. And there are no scientific guidelines on that sort of thing. So we've got a lot of thinking to do at council, bearing in mind all of the considerations that have been brought forward. And we are, and we will. But those are the three areas of consideration that I've heard from one and all today. So I leave it to council members to give us their thoughts. You've heard Sean's recommendations. Do you have any further questions or comments about those? Yes, Councillor Richards.
I believe that the community is unanimous in their whether they are opposed or in support of this. I think that they are all unanimous in their concern for the environment. I believe that we are in an era where we want to support homesteading operations, given food insecurity, and it's a return to a natural way of life. I think we owe it to all of those involved to consider the environmental impacts given the proximity to the water in a scientific way, so that environmental impact needs to address not only the property, but the surrounding properties and their proximity to water. I do not believe that the Kegel family wishes to harm the environment in any way. And I do believe that they want to support their community in keeping the environment as pristine as possible, while moving forward in a vision of homesteading that I fully support. So I'd like to see that environmental impact done, along with some consideration for the existing land uses around it. And I think that that's important for us to support as a council, given that the SR2 designation was a decision of the OMB previously. And so we cannot make this decision lightly.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Barry.
I think probably two of my strongest passions are local food initiatives and the environment. And it seems like we're at a little bit of a crossroad here. So I completely support. I spoke with Sean yesterday. I've read all of the letters, and I, although there's been multiple people saying that there hasn't been public consultation, I think from the amount of public participation in this has been, really a great thing to see. And I have read every single email and weighed the sort of pros and cons of both things, and the community has grown, and so the use and the amount of people living and using that area is different than what it was 100 years ago. So what was an impact on, maybe 50, 100 cottages is different now because of the amount of people that live in the community. So I support Sean's recommendation about an impact study, an environmental impact study, and possibly a bit of a site plan after that impact study would come back of how this property could lay out, and maybe it means there's less nutrients on the property, or maybe there's more of a setback. But I think also looking at the weather and how, we have floods and we have water runoffs and those type of things, having all those sort of brought into it. And, I think probably everyone here that supports the environment and supports the lake health, they probably support local food initiatives too. So I think there's a way that together we can kind of come up with some sort of a compromise. I'm not in favor of saying, a hard no to this, but I'm looking at a way that we can, safely have assurances that the application is in the best interest of the Kegels, the community, and the future generations.
Councillor Short-Reed?
Sorry, I agree with everything that's been said. I think this is part of the future. I think that not this actual application, but people being self-sufficient. And I do agree with Sean's recommendation for an assessment.
Thank you. Now, Sean, you had two recommendations. We've touched on the first, which is the EIA. You mentioned a second recommendation about buffer zones. Could you go into that a little bit further, or setbacks, site plans, just to give us a bit of more of an understanding of what to expect coming forward?
So I think that may come from the environmental impact study.
Okay.
If there's some sort of recommendation for an increased setback, then we could look at addressing that through zoning after we've reviewed that report. Because I don't want to just pick a number out of thin air.
Yeah.
So.
And does an environmental impact assessment include, or could it include, issues such as predators, smells, those sorts of things, or do they fall outside of an EIA?
I can't say I've come across a report that addressed those concerns.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some consideration will have to be given to those comments as well. Much thinking to be done. So with that recommendation on the table, do you have a motion for us to hear, Madam Clerk? She's crafting. Now, knowing the gist of what she's writing, could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Short-Reed, Councillor Richards. Yes, please.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives planning report PL 7924 regarding rezoning of lands located at part of Lot 15, Concession 8, Geographic Township of Stanhope for Kegel, and that Council defer the application and request the applicants to have an environmental impact study be completed by a qualified professional and brought back to Council for further consideration.
All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, one and all. It's been a very good morning. I'm always delighted to see people participate in their municipal governance process. I think it makes us stronger, and hopefully we will be able to come back with a very strong decision at the right moment based on all of the things that we've heard today from the applicants and from the public. So thank you very much for your time. And with that, I think we should take a 15-minute break. So we'll be back in 15 minutes. Ray Maver about the community safety zone request on North Shore Road and a petition that's been signed by various people. Would you like to come up and yes, please. Thank you. Welcome.
Start?
Yep, please go right ahead.
First of all, good morning and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name's Ray Maver and I live on North Shore Road, 1256, opposite the Cooper site, the Cooper parking lot.
And Ray, would you mind just moving your microphone a little bit closer?
Sure.
Just so
I
that
am
we,
soft spoken.
thank you.
Yes. Okay. Do you want me to start over
Nope,
again?
I'm
Nope.
sure this is
Okay.
grand. Thank you.
Okay. I spent about 6 months a year up here and have done so for almost 53 years. And I love this county. It's beautiful. It's my happy spot. The increased traffic is a concern to me on this road. After talking to friends, we agreed that a petition would be a constructive step in bringing our concerns about the traffic to the attention of council. Can everybody hear me? No.
If you could just try to speak up a little bit.
Okay.
More, that would
Yep.
be just great.
Going door to door with the petition, I was shocked at how eager people were to sign the petition. Incidents such as my daughter-in-law being grazed by a side view mirror while walking on the road, and my neighbor, he told me he had to actually jump into a ditch to avoid a vehicle at the Homestead farm with the 90-degree turn, the old alpaca farm. He had to do that to avoid being hit. And it really made it clear that why people don't feel safe on this road anymore. The traffic is one major concern. It surrounds the Cooper Lookout Trail and parking lot. And I'm very aware of it because I live opposite it. We encourage visitors to climb the trail, but if they use the parking lot, we're forcing them to walk on the road. And that's about a 50-meter walk to get to the trail. I'm not a lawyer, but I do wonder about the issue of liability when we've encouraged people to walk on the road without safeguarding them. In terms of volume of traffic, I've crunched some numbers. The landfill is open approximately 1,600 hours a year, and it handles over 30,000 vehicle visits per year. All 30,000 vehicles travel on North Shore Road. This is not, I don't think, even the trucks and the heavy equipment that go down this road. This is not included in this figure. And there's a lot. There are 3 community safety zones that I know of in Haliburton County. One is in Inglesby and 2 in Minden. I think the Minden one just went in about a week and a half ago. Several have been recently been installed in the Kawarthas. And last August, Niagara Region approved the installation of 12 community safety zones in order to, quote, address specific and localized community safety concerns, unquote. They also noted that the cost of signage is minimal. The reason for all of the installations is that the community safety zones have been proven to work. They slow traffic down, they make users of the road more aware of each other, and they make it safer. My commentary observation letter that I hope everybody has read contained one error. The increased time required to drive at 35 kilometers per hour is not 1 minute and 30 seconds, but 1 minute and 51 seconds. If you have any questions, I thought I'd keep it short and sweet because I do have the cover letter and the petition itself. And I realize I don't have any support of visual faces here, but I have, and I think there are more added after the petition was submitted. So there's 2 more, and I've had a number of people come to me and say, we'd like to sign. I said, it's too late now, but I will, mention you. So I think there was 99 signatures on that petition, and I know I could get at least 10 more. So there's power in numbers. So think of those signatures as faces in the room. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try and answer them. And I thank you for your attention. It's really, I invite you to walk North Shore Road. I have learned so much since starting this petition. The first house I went to, he turned and he said, we moved here a year ago. And he said, we do not walk this road. It's too dangerous. And I know that the feeling, like in the cover letter, I basically, you know, came forth with comments that I was given. But basically, this one man said, we don't walk it. It's too dangerous. And a lot of people feel that they're captive to their properties now. They can't use their strollers on the road. The road is basically 2 car widths wide. And on occasion, there's only 1.5 feet of shoulder and sometimes 4-foot ditches to contend with. Are there any questions for me? That's all I've written because I wrote a cover letter and hopefully people.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. I do put it to council. Do you have any questions for our delegate? No? Do you, I take it from what I've read and from what I've heard that people are very much in support of finding and creating safer conditions on the road.
Yes.
Are you of the belief that a community safety zone is the only way to do this? There are certain limitations to that. If I'm not mistaken, in order for higher fines to be put upon speeders, those speeders have to be caught by the OPP, but the OPP aren't very often on that road, which is something that we've talked about before. But it puts the onus very much on the car driver rather than looking at all of the different variables that create safe or unsafe conditions on the road.
Yes.
So could you speak to that? Is it your belief that a community safety zone is the only way, or are you looking for more safe conditions?
Obviously, more safe conditions. A sidewalk, I think, is totally unreasonable in that there's no space. There's no space for any walkers or strollers or, you know, dog walkers. You know, there's just no space. It's 2 car widths wide, and it's dangerous. As far as the community safety zone goes, that seems to be the trend. And I know that when I go through a community safety zone, I'm right on the limit. I'm not going to mess around with that. And it has nothing to do with fines or anything like that. I realize that area is a riskier area. The one thing that I really feel is that this is the community of Algonquin Highlands on this road. Other than we don't have any commercial businesses on this road, but this is kind of the epicenter of the community. We have all of our facilities here on this road. And I had a friend who mentioned, well, we could put in, you know, the raised speed bumps and that they could be taken out in the fall. But that's one issue where I know that they work in Toronto, but we have ambulances, we have fire trucks here. And I can see that being a detriment to them. But that could work. It could be augmented. The safety zone could be augmented with the speed bumps as well. But the trend seems to be to the community safety zones. And I was very pleased driving through Minden last week and realizing that they now have 2 zones. I think that's the way to go, to be honest, because people are very aware of those zones.
Right. Thank you.
As far as the OPP go, I I hesitate, but there could be photo radar instituted that would save a lot of running around for the OPP because it would be connected that way. It's been an issue. I've had basically some confusing messages in that this, you know, with the solar speed signs. Some people say in official capacities that they don't work. Well, it seems to me that they work temporarily, but they're kind of like a Band-Aid. And if you talk to the OPP, they say, yes, they do work. But it's a question of, we've all got to work together. And in fact, I was told at one point, everyone should be calling the OPP and complaining about the speed to them. Well, to be honest, they're burning out. There aren't enough police. And why add the cost to that when we don't need to? You know, we could look at alternate methods for that rather than involving the police. If people will self-discipline and self-police themselves in a community safety zone, that would be the way to go as far as I'm concerned. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. Yeah. Are there any other questions from council? I would like to invite our public works manager to step forward for a bit, who might be able to answer a couple of questions about things such as the speed radars, and I think he's got a report coming up in the next little while about that. And just I'd like to encourage council to consider that road. We know there are problems on the road, but I'd like to hear more from council and speak to staff on prospects too. So thank you very much. And I might ask you to take a seat so that
Okay.
our public works manager can come up.
Could I say one thing? And that is, if you come on, and I I don't like the term cottage country. To me, this is an area for everybody. It's for permanent residents. It's for people who come into cottages. It's on a Saturday morning in the summer. If you have a special event at the field, you also have people parking along the road. You have people parking at the side of the parking lot. You have cycle groups that start here at this parking lot. You have walkers because people don't want to drive up. You have walkers on the road that are trying to get up here, and it's chaos. So, you know, this is a very special road. This is not a rural road, really. This is an urban road. And I think we have to look at the safety issues around that, because people want to walk. And we're trying to encourage participation and things like that. But, you know, how can we if you feel it's too dangerous?
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wonder if we could have Mr. Thorne come up and join us in case council has any questions for Mr. Thorne on what we've heard from the presentation. Yeah, Councillor Barry.
Just further to, I know that, you know, this issue has come to us before, and Adam has gone to procure the warning signs and the tally of what's happening on the road. Just, I guess, a question in when that information might be coming to us.
Yes, through you, Mayor. So what we'll be doing is putting a report together for the next council meeting.
And will there be a comparison? I noticed now, I live in this area, that it's now located on Airport Road. Will there be a comparison of how the traffic differs in far as speeding versus from North Shore to Airport Road or other roads?
So the way that the device works is that it will give us a rating from, and I have it somewhat in front of me, but it's basically 0 to 30 kilometers. Then it'll go 31 to 40, 41 to 50, 51 to 60, and so on, all the way up. So what we can compare is essentially how much traffic is going under the speed limit. Just as a quick example, 70% of traffic on North Shore Road was doing under the speed limit in the time frame that we had the signs up. So that's at a 50-kilometer-an-hour speed. So Airport Road, Stanhope Airport Road is a 60-kilometer-an-hour. So we would then look at that and say, whatever the percentage is, below 60. Yeah.
Yes, this isn't really a question for Adam, but it's just my comment is, I think, you know, unfortunately, I support in some regards a community safety area. However, I feel like the entire road is being used by cyclists and walkers, and I don't support having the entire road being a safety zone. So I find that is a little bit of a complication, because how can we say, you know, you can you can go at higher speed in this area and a lower speed in this area when the congestion is on the entire road. You know what I mean? And I feel that the drivers are definitely at fault in many cases for going too fast, but there is, as someone who travels the road frequently, I've been on the road where there's 3-4 people widthwise, and the road is not, there isn't a sidewalk, and it's not a designed walking path. So it's on both sides. We have the community not using the road safely and speed and the drivers not using the roads safely. So it's a bit of a conundrum. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for a signage that lets people know as they enter North Shore and maybe as they on either side that it is a road that is traveled by families and walking and dogs, and just a bit of a, like, when you enter the road, you know, that like some sort of public education that this is not your typical rural road. And I do think that having the landfill, having extra traffic coming on it has a definite impact on it. And then once we get into the fall colors, we have more people walking with dogs and bikes and that. And yeah, it's definitely a challenging situation, and I recognize the community's concern. Yeah, it's typical. It's tricky because we want to share the road safely on both sides.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Richards.
I still maintain how I feel about the road personally. I feel dangerous in a lot of the blind turns that are on that road. And even just last night I was walking and I witnessed the same thing of walkers walking a dog literally in the middle of the road, not off to the side, but in the middle of the road. So it does go to both sides of things. As someone who does travel the road a lot, I would say I'm more aware. And so I do travel at a lower speed in anticipation that another vehicle is going to be coming in the other direction around those blind turns, or that there's going to be walkers in the road. That's not necessarily true of people who don't use the road very often. I feel that it would be an extremely long stretch to put a full community safety zone in that road. As I've mentioned before, a 3-way stop at St. Peter's, I think, would go a long way. But on the other side of that, I don't personally see a lot of room for creating sidewalks or a cycling path. The road does seem too narrow, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. If there is something that could be created to enlarge the shoulders or something that would give walkers more space and the ability to share the road.
Again, through you, Deputy Mayor, what I would suggest then, if that's the case, is that council would need to direct that when we reconstruct roads, is that we would have to look at a minimum width of a road that we're willing to go with. So typically we run between 7 and 8 meters of road surface. So if you wanted a wider shoulder, then we'd be looking at a 9 or a 10 meter wide road. You can imagine in some areas we just might not have that ability. We could look at the potential of we do our roadside grass cutting once a year. So we could look at maybe in a certain section, if council so choose, to mow that more often to allow people to walk on the shoulder versus on the road. Again, signage. We can put up some kind of signage that may direct people, you know, for the trail parking, that they need to walk in the ditch, or we need to widen that section maybe. I mean, there are some options out there that we would have to maybe take a look at to see what could be done. All of it has a cost associated to it, not just the material going on the road, but staff time. I also think that when we brought to council the change in landfills, we were expecting the increased traffic. That's part of the reason why the first section of North Shore Road was finished, just so that we were anticipating that as well. When I did some of the quick number crunching just this morning in preparation for this, was just the traffic count is inconsistent to show it's the landfill that's the increase. I'm not trying to say it's not, because we definitely know the increased traffic. There is increased traffic at the landfill. That's why it was designed the way it was. But there's inconsistent numbers in that, because I have data that shows on a Saturday, there's less than 400 cars going down North Shore Road. But on a Wednesday, we have data that shows 400 plus cars. So you could easily say that the landfill was open Wednesday, therefore there was more traffic. But on a Thursday, it shows that there was only 300 cars. The following Thursday, there's 400 cars, and the landfill's closed on Thursday. So the amount of traffic going up and down North Shore Road, I can't clearly say that that is going to North Shore Road, or sorry, to the landfill. What we could do is put the speed sign on on McPhail Road to document how many cars are coming in. But I think it's an unfair assessment now, given that the summer is past and the amount of traffic is going to be reduced. So it's something that we'll plan for in July of next year. There are other options I'm sure we can possibly come up with. You know, the trail, is there and I don't know, and I can't speak for the manager of Parks, Rec and Trails, but is there an opportunity to enter an agreement with the property owners to access the trail from behind the property, you know, so they don't even have to walk on the road? I don't know what that looks like for the manager of PRT, but could that be an option? So there are different things out there that we could potentially look at, but the end result is, I've sat on North Shore Road. I've watched the cars go past the sign. I've lived on North Shore Road from 2010 to 2017. I physically run up and down North Shore Road. You know, there's good days and there's bad days. And the end result is, if we reduce the speed limit, is that going to stop traffic? Is that going to slow them down? It's the enforcement. I watch traffic go by that road sign, and I see it on Airport Road because it's at the just down the road from where I work. I can see the sign stay red and no brake lights on the vehicles driving by it. In the first 2 days, yep, there was a lot of brake lights. Now, the sign stays red, it says slow down, and there's no brake lights on the vehicle going by. So staff are doing what we can to help reduce that speed or help inform the public. But at the end of the day, it's enforcement of law enforcement is what we need on our road to curb that. But that's my opinion towards that.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor Short-Reed, any thoughts?
I know this road was never built for anything but cars. I'm wondering if just a couple of share the road signs would help.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, oh yeah, Angie, did you have something to say as well?
I'm not sure where council's leaning here, but I'd like to recommend that council let Adam bring his report back on the statistics for the sign, and provide some recommendations in that regard for council's further consideration.
I think it's actually quite good timing that we've taken the initiative to put up those radars, and that you're about to bring a report back, because it does give us a moment to consider these very real considerations of safety. We do have lots of folks traveling up and down that road. There aren't sidewalks, you know, everything that has already been said. My personal fear is that establishing such a long community safety zone would simply not do what you're hoping it's going to do, because it's only one measure. But perhaps I'm not opposed to the idea, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to resolve the concerns of safety. There's this piece about public education, the fact that it is a road, and indeed people walk 2 or 3 or 4 abreast. You know, that's also a part of public safety. And what I would hesitate to do is come up with a solution that puts the exclusive onus on the driver, when there are physical considerations, there are pedestrian considerations, bicycle considerations, and driver considerations, and traffic changes. So it could be that a community safety zone might be one piece of the answer. Maybe wouldn't need a community safety zone if we can resolve it through other means. I'm not sure, but I would be very happy if staff were able to come back with these questions in mind next month and give us a sense. I do concur with comment that was made that such a long community safety zone can be problematic because people don't necessarily know that they're in it anymore. They might have forgotten that they saw the sign in the first place. So there are lots of little variables that go along with safety, and it's safety that we are concerned with. So I very much appreciate CAO's recommendation to come back next month rather than pass a resolution one way or the other now. Any final thoughts?
I'm just wondering if in that report, if it's not too much work, and I'm not by no means am I directing staff, it's just a question, if we could identify maybe 4 of the congested areas. I know that we are doing road work there in the next couple of years, and just if like I can think of a couple areas myself, but if we could recognize maybe if we did put up share the road signs where those smart, like where they would be best placed and where there is the most congestion. And it's tricky because I've been on areas where there's a straightaway with more of an open road, shall we? And you still have people walking 3-4 wide with dogs and things like that. Where maybe in the more congested areas, they are walking single file, but it's tricky when the congested area is being maybe used a little bit more smartly than the areas that are more open. You know what I'm saying? Anyway,
If I may, I guess I just need a little clarification on your thoughts of congested area. Are you referring to like from the trail to the trailhead, sorry, the trail parking to the trailhead? Would that be your consideration of a congested area, or are you just thinking of a high impact area?
I think both. I think the trail area too, and I think there's probably some areas probably between, well, maybe past Dawson Road, but from like North Shore or from St. Peter's to just past Dawson Road. Like I'm thinking some of the area is quite congested because now you have people parking on the road, you have cottages, people walking across the lake per se, that like those kind of areas, that kind of or
Okay, yeah. Again, through you, Deputy Mayor. So then what I would respectfully suggest is that the report will come back from St. Peter's to North Shore with information and recommendations. From St. Peter's to Stanhope Airport Road. I think a lot of that will be addressed when we rebuild the road. Taking this information into consideration, I think that when we go to rebuild that road, you'll see quite a few changes because there are in the plans talking about widening the road, cleaning the ditches, extending things of that nature so that it moves the road away from the lake for those slump sections. And you'll see that come forward. So if I may, then I would like to have my report geared around the statistics from the speed signs and possible recommendations on signage and in your congested areas from St. Peter's to North Shore or to 35.
And I wonder if raised speed bumps are also a thought for staff to consider in those areas where, you know, things get pretty dicey and maybe there's a curve in a particularly congested area, even seasonal, just to see if that is another measure to help slow people down, you know, at the really dicey spots. It's all good food for thought. And I think we can trust our public works folks to put together some ideas that based on your knowledge of the road as well. Be just great.
And if I may on that, I have seen the speed bumps and I've seen them in other areas, Barrie mostly. They're not a bad idea by any means. It's just something food for thought to consider. If you put something in the road that changes the dynamic of a vehicle in travel right before a corner, you pose a risk of making that vehicle lose control into a corner. You move it too far away from the corner so that they don't have that risk of losing control, then it's irrelevant because they just speed back up again. Right. So I will look into it and I will bring something forward. I just wanted to share that just so that it's in your thought process.
Great. Very helpful. Thank you. I'm afraid we're now closed for public comments. The delegation component is over, but I would encourage you to, you know, if you'd like to write an email to the Public Works Department, you'd be very welcome to do that.
It wasn't to do with
I'm afraid there's, at this stage where we have no further public comment, but thank you for your interest and do get in touch, privately. Are there any other comments or questions for Mr. Thorne? Great. I think we've got a good way forward, a good holistic way forward. Is there, you've got a resolution there? Yeah. So can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation? Yes, Councillor Richards, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives a delegation and petition containing 98 signatures from Ray Maber regarding a request for community safety zone along North Shore Road from Highway 35 to intersection at St. Peter's Road and North Shore Road for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much for your time, and Mr. Thorne for yours. So we have no presentations today. Was there anything from the consent agenda that anyone wanted to pull? No. So these are going into the bylaw section, is that right?
No,
or
just
do you
read a motion.
read a
to approve
motion
the
now?
consent
Okay,
agenda.
great, yeah. Oh, yeah, move in a seconder, please. Councillor Berry and Councillor Richards.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, item listed under consent agenda are considered routine and acted in one motion, and that each matter of business contained in the consent agenda is recorded separately in the minutes of the meeting. And the council has reviewed the consent agenda consisting of various staff reports containing proposed recommendations. And further, council approve and adopt the September 5th, 2024 consent agenda and recommendations contained in the staff report and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we're into building and bylaw enforcement, and the return of the dog control bylaw, the third draft. Thank you, Robert, for being with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. Do you have some thoughts you want to present right off the hop?
So, as per council's request from last meeting, I have made those changes as per the request. If there's any questions or anything, I can answer.
Yeah, great. I've read through it, and indeed, we made a series of requests and they've all been integrated, and I feel quite satisfied with what's been brought back. Any questions or comments from council? Wonderful. So I believe we've got a resolution, do we not? Could I have a mover and a seconder to enact the dog control bylaw? Councillor Richards, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives bylaw report BLDG 1624 regarding the revised draft dog control bylaw for information, and the council supports the proposed revised draft dog control bylaw and directs that the bylaw be tabled for consideration. And further, council concurs with the proposed licensing fees to be added to the township's comprehensive fees and charges bylaw and brought forward to the next council meeting for adoption.
All in favor? That's carried. And again, our thanks for the incredible amount of work that has gone into this by yourself and the whole team. It's great to see these things strengthened over time, and you've done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
So under Parks, Recreation and Trails, we only have one item, which is the resignation letter received by Kim Kutov Bretower. Did you want to speak to that, Mr. Card?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, or Deputy Mayor and Council. Yes, that's correct. Just to say that I did have a lovely time working with Kim over her time there. She was very instrumental in helping run a number of successful events. The one big one where it was very much her heart and soul being the Canada Day celebration in Ox Tongue Lake, which was very well received and well attended. So we're going to miss her, but hope to see her out at future events.
Great, thank you very much. And I also extend my great thanks to Kim. And I believe we've advertised for future candidates for that committee, have we? Okay.
That is correct.
Great, thank you very much. So now we're on to, yes.
Likewise, I also extend Kim was fantastic to work with and did a lot of hard work for her community. I just wanted to clarify, I think we had discussion at a previous meeting about having a discussion about the rec committee in general, and I just want to confirm that is something that we're bringing forward shortly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And is there a motion to receive her resignation? So could I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillor Barry and Councillor Shortreed, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council acknowledges with regret the resignation of Kim Kruthoff Breathauer from the Recreation Committee.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And next, we've got environmental business. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
And you want to take us through some correspondence from the Dorset Lions Club, is that right?
Just they have submitted a request to have fees waived for disposal of some of the materials that they use at the site. Just to clarify some of the details from their letter. I did have a chance to chat with the site attendant, and the quote that he had provided was the tipping fee cost per construction materials, which is $80 per cubic yard. My estimate, given the amount of materials that they've stated, would be about half a cubic yard that they would be looking at there. And at this time, we don't have any formal policy for waiving of tipping fees. And the Lions Club doesn't incur any cost for use of that site. There's a formal agreement for them to use that site and be responsible for any of the materials and any of the operations of their collection depot.
Yes, Councillor Shortreed.
Just so everyone knows, the Lions do the liquor returns there. They collect them. They have a separate area where they store them. The beer store actually comes and picks them up. And I think the plywood in that has become rotten and the employees can't go in there to pick them up. But all the money that they do raise from this drive goes directly back into the community.
Yeah, good point. Any other comments or concerns with this request? Yes, Councillor Barry.
Just clarification. So in this letter, it's quoted that the tipping fee would be $80. Melissa is saying that it would probably be closer to $40, but we don't have anything in place to waive the fee. I guess I'm at a little bit of so do we go back to them and say that we will reduce, or the actual cost is $40, or can we just waive the $40 fee?
Madam CAO?
So that's correct. We don't have a policy, and that's why it's before council to make the decision on the request. I would recommend that you waive an upset limit of $80 so that if it's somewhere in between there, it's not going to affect anything.
Right. Anyone concerned with that recommendation? All right, let's go ahead. Is there a mover and a seconder to support Councillor Richardson Shortreed?
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives correspondence from Dave Mullins representing the Dorset Lions Club requesting landfill fees be waived for the old plywood that needs to be replaced under the bins, and that council approves the request to waive tipping fees for the disposal of the old plywood to an upset limit of $80.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And I believe that is all for our environment business today. Thank you very much, Melissa.
Thank you.
Moving into Public Works, thank you once again for joining us, Mr. Thorne. And your first point of business is regarding a vehicle tender approval, is that right?
That's correct. Yes, excuse me. In most cases, with the larger pieces of equipment and due to COVID, we have generally come forward and asked for an early request to get the ball rolling to purchase vehicles. And again, we're just back here again, but we'd like to go with the county is working on a couple projects for purchasing vehicles in the new year. This aligns with our vehicle replacement schedule. So we would just looking for approval to go ahead with that.
Sounds absolutely logical to me. Any questions or concerns? Wonderful. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Barry and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Berry, seconded by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives Public Works Report PW 2524 regarding vehicle tender approval for information, and Council authorize staff to tender truck replacement in 2024 with a delivery date in 2025.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And next, a lawn tractor purchase.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. The lawn tractor purchase was originally set up with Chris Card, Manager PRT, during the budget discussions. As we've moved through this year, we've transferred the lawn tractors over into Public Works. It just made more sense. It's Public Works staff that mostly use them, so it just made sense to have it fall there. And through our discussions on upcoming maintenance and work that we do for grass cutting and work that we do at the airport, it was felt that this lawn tractor it would meet the current needs, but not the future needs for grass cutting next year and for snow blowing potentially this winter. So we looked at what our options are, and we'd like to purchase a tractor very similar to almost identical to the tractor that was purchased last year. So it's a lawn tractor with a under mower deck and a snow blower. This would allow us in the wintertime to use the snow blower portion at the airport for cleaning around the hangars and the lights, which is currently done by hand. And then in the event that one of the snow blowers breaks down for the rink or the sidewalks in Dorset, we would be able to pull that one from the airport to go and help out until the repairs were made and then put it back to the airport.
And financial implications then, where I believe there's an increase of 6,500, is that right?
That's correct.
And where would you draw that from?
That would be coming from the lawn tractor reserve.
The lawn tractor reserve, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Thoughts, comments, questions from council? Sounds like that's a go. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Richards, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives Public Works Report PW 2624 regarding lawn tractor purchase for information. Council approves the purchase of a Kubota GR 2120 with 48-inch mower deck and snow blower, and that the additional cost be funded from the Parks Equipment Reserve if required.
All in favor? That's carried. Next, some news about the airport grant funding.
Yes, through you, Mayor. Unfortunately, as you can see in the report, we did not receive the funding that we applied for the renovation of the airport terminal building. Unfortunately, in the report, it does say why we did not receive it, that we did not meet two of the requirements. So what I am proposing, staff is proposing, is that we keep this project shovel ready for the next grant opportunity that it could be applied for. And then with all the projects that we currently have on the go right now and scheduled for 2025, I would like to maybe revisit this in late 2025 if there is an option, maybe to get it started for a completion in 2026. But for right now, just kind of shelve it as a shovel-ready project.
Mm-hmm. It's disappointing news, to be sure, but you've not lost anything by making it shovel ready. I think there could be an opportunity coming out of the blue, and we know how quickly some of these application times are, the turnaround times are. So disappointing in one respect, but certainly not a loss of time. It's a great thing that's been done so far. So thank you. Thank you for that. How does council feel? Are you in favor with the proposed shelving until a better moment? Yes. All right. A mover and a seconder to receive the report then. Councillor Berry and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives Public Works Report PW 2724 regarding airport grant funding update for information, and Council concurs with the recommendation made in the said report to delay the initiation of the terminal building renovation project and to revisit the specifics of in the fall of 2025 unless another funding opportunity arises.
All in favor? That's carried. Great. And in very positive news, you've got some options for us for signs for the Dorset Recreation Center. Would you like to take us through that and your suggestion for public consultation?
Again, through you, Deputy Mayor. So this was brought forward prior, and the idea was that we were going to get the public to chime in on how they would like to see the sign. So we did put together 3 options for viewing. The basis behind the options were to try and tie in, when you look at the building, we were trying to tie in the old version of the building with the new section, the new entranceway. And by doing that, we looked at utilizing the same material that the posts are made out of, and the same stain. And that would also include tying in the current gardens that were built and are in place as well. So the backer was the idea to have that tie in the whole building into one. So the 3 options that are brought forward are to have the backer on them. And then it's just a matter of, is the logo on the left, the type of writing, that type of thing. So if council so chooses to just pick an option right now and suggest that we go forward with that, so be it. Or if you would like to go to the public with a polling report or a poll that we can get the communications coordinator to help out with. We could run it for 2 weeks, and then I can bring that back in one of the next council meetings to show you what the public has chosen, and then we could go forward with the sign.
What say ye, council? Council Shortreed.
I truly believe we need some public opinion for sure.
Great. Council Barry.
Sorry, I've got a wrench. I personally, I totally support it going to the public for input. You know, I look at the building, I look at the sign, and I see it as an opportunity for something a little bit more cultural, possibly a mural, or maybe working with the museum and having sort of a historical image put on the building. And I just wonder if possibly that could go out to the community as an option or a consideration.
Mr. Thorne.
If I may, through you, Deputy Mayor, I think I like your idea. And I know we talked about it in the past. The signage was more just the signage for the building. And then the next step would be including whether the museum wants to get involved or the community in a sense of a mural. That would be like the second step, if you will, to what could be put on the building. So I want to just get a bit of clarification that we could still do that and do the sign. So I just didn't know how you wanted to proceed then.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, like I would be in full support of having a sign put on, you know, sooner rather than later. But it would be nice to know if there's community support for a mural or large, you know, blown up image of something historical on there. I just hope that, you know, I'm looking at option 3. If we were to put the sign smack dab in the middle of the building, that would limit what we could put in such a large space. So maybe consideration of placement for another thing if the community is in support of that.
Your thoughts?
Lots of thoughts. I think when it comes to the signage, if the consensus is that we'll go to the public and get them to vote on the sign, I think that's great. I think we could talk to the community or the communications coordinator, and see if we could put a poll together. If council chooses to maybe ask some of those questions, would the community like to see a mural on the building? What would the community like to see on the building? And maybe the coordinator can come up with some ideas of other communities that have done something similar. I think that might be a good option. As far as placement of the sign, that is entirely up to council. I mean, putting it dead center of the building kind of makes it uniform and it fits. But if council so chooses to put it under one of the lights or move it to the left or the right, I guess that's just council's decision on placement.
Council Shortreed.
And I think right now you can't see everything because there's so much stuff there now. Like this is the old building before the renovation. So now there's all the planters, all the picnic tables, and the parking's out. So it looks, the actual building looks different. So this would be centered with everything that's there now.
Yeah. And to that, I wonder if when we do the survey, if we might be able to use a photo that includes those beautiful planters, that includes the entry, or at least if, you know, maybe you need a zoom in, but also a zoom out one so people can see how beautifully it would tie in with all of the additional elements that have been put up. And I think that would help people reflect on the concept of a mural and whether it would be too much or not enough or whatever that might be. Yeah. Councillor Richard.
I think there's a difference between the front and the back of the building. We would be talking about a mural on the back of the building towards the highway side, I think, versus signage in the front. Is that right? Or have I got something wrong?
Councillor Barry, do you want to confirm what your thinking is
My
with your
thinking is-
microphone?
I'm not saying put a mural on both sides, but I'm not saying not to, but but I do feel that although the sign is beautiful and it you know gives a title to the building, I do still feel the building looks a little bit industrial. So having it at the front of the building, to me, I like every time I go up to Oxtongue, I think that's because I was part of the mural project when that happened there. It just breathes life to the building. So some sort of consideration. I know I've been in like, well, there's tons up in Huntsville area, but I've also been to like areas like Owen Sound where they have just simple images of some of the heritage in their community. So like a logger or whatnot, just something a little bit cultural.
Councillor Richards?
So my concern with that is in overall aesthetics as well. If you're looking at as much as we want signage on the building to be updated from what is there currently, if there's an overall vision for some sort of mural, it may not align with this signage at all, and take away the artistic ability of what we would really rather see there as a mural. So I'm hesitant to move forward with this new signage and spend that money. And it's therefore placement on the building, front or back, without having more of an idea of where we're going with this mural.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and just before I pass it over to you, I think we could leave it in the trustworthy hands of staff to figure out how to message those options as part of the public outreach in a way that we get to the root of exactly what you're saying. Yeah, I'm sure we're able to do that. Yeah.
And I think to help too, when we look at signage on a building, we look at like the municipal office here, it has its signage. Each building has its own signage that's designated to the building. When we talk about murals, you know, is there going to be a possibility that the mural may change? You know, in the next 10 years, would we come back and say we'd like to change to something different? If we have signage on the building from one of these designs and the public chooses it and we mount it on the building, we can offer the locations on the building for murals. And should they change over the time, just the mural would change, not the entire sign that says the Dorset Recreation Center. The Dorset Recreation Center sign would be unique to the building and the entranceway to tie everything in. The murals would be more of the community that brought it here. You know, like you said, a logger or the tower or something along those lines, with locations that we could say that these are the 3 locations we have. This is the size of the mural that could be. What say you, if you will?
Councillor Barry?
I think it's worth mentioning that I think if we had a cultural committee in place right now, this would be an opportunity for that input to be, you know, considered as well. I think they had done such great work with their previous, you know, plaque project, and I think that's, I don't know if that will be reinstated in the next coming year, but I think I like the idea of the changing, maybe less of a painted mural and more of an image being a moving target or that type of thing.
Councillor Richards?
I guess the problem that I'm hung up on here is, as much as I actually really like the signage, I find it not very basic in as our other signages on other buildings. And to me, that pulls away substantially from artistic ability to create something that goes along with it. It limits it because it's so along, you know, one theme kind of, in a way. It's not very plain like our other signage on other buildings that would open up, you know, substantially to design. So that's kind of my holdback, personal, but it's my holdback.
Yeah, I think there are some important puzzle pieces that have been brought out, and again, I'm pretty sure staff will be able to take with that and figure out the right way forward, very much bearing in mind what's been said. Can I go to Angie first and then?
And just to Councillor Richards' point, though, is there something we should be including that's more plain as far as the sign? Like, what's there now is black lettering.
Mhm.
That would be where my mind would go, is either we upgrade that, or, because that's about as plain as you can go. So I'm not sure what you were thinking there. And should we be including something more plain?
What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, we may want to. I think for me, it's the visual, with the wood background that to me limits it to a certain design alley, if that makes sense. If it was just the lettering, it makes it more of that plain blank canvas. But I don't necessarily, I like it. So I don't necessarily want to not have the wood there, but I need to see the overall.
Yeah. And it could be, and I absolutely see your hand, but it could be that when we see it in context of having those beautiful planters and the beautiful entrance, which are wood, it could be that extra element isn't actually as extra as it appears to be in this photograph, but that's where those mock-ups are really helpful. Yes.
I know that I've heard from you several times about like the cohesion of branding and having sort of a continued brand across the township. I look at this and personally, I know we're not supposed to pick an option if it's going to going to the public, but I really do feel that option one has the logo, it's concise. It has a little bit more of a cultural feel to it. It has our brand on it. I do support that. I do find all of them, and this is coming from, I'm not going to say my age, but from someone with fairly young eyes, I do find it's a little bit hard to read, but maybe that's just in the context of how it's being presented to us.
Anyone else want to specify their preferences before we put it out to completely objective public consultation? All right. Great. I think that, yeah, wraps it up. Good. Thank you very much. These, what a great start. What an excellent start. Yeah.
Thank you.
So a mover and a seconder to receive the report. And is there also to go out for option B? Great. Okay. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council receives Public Works Report PW 2824 regarding Dorset Recreation Center signage options for information, and Council approves the 3 designs as presented and directs staff to proceed with option B in the said report. And further, Council authorized the cost of $6,500 for the sign.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A pleasure as always. On to Fire Services Business Welcome Chief.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor and Council.
And you have some thoughts regarding a grant to
Definitely. I want to request support from Council for what's known as the Solicitor General Fire Protection Grant. A little background. Firefighters in Ontario contract cancer at a rate 4 times of an average person because of the job-related issues we have. Included in that is we average 30 firefighters a year pass from those cancers. So Fire Marshal John Pegg has been advocating to the Ministry of Solicitor General to create a cancer prevention program. As a result of this, the Solicitor General has stepped forward and put a grant in place. The grant's a 3-year grant, which will commit $10 million a year to a fire cancer prevention program for our firefighters. What I'm looking at is applying for is under minor infrastructure is an extractor, and that's used to wash our bunker gear and that. We do currently have one. The one is very, very small. We're finding that it's putting a lot of load on us when we have a fire call to the point that be up to a week before we get firefighters back in full service. And as a result of that, the firefighters don't want to be unavailable, so they're wearing dirty gear. So this unit will tentatively do 5 sets at a time. So on an average fire, we have normally between 15 and 20 people involved that would have residue on them, carcinogen and that we should get them all back in service the same day. The second item is personal protective clothing. And what's happened, and I can remember when I first started, it was a real honor to have the dirtiest helmet on the department. You never clean nothing. And that's gone totally by the wayside. And so it's called soft items. And so when a firefighter gets out of the building now under this proposed method that we want to follow, they take their helmet and they pull the inner liner out, they pull all the soft items out of the helmet, they throw them into a bag. They're Nomex hoods. They don't even think about it. They just keep using it. Again, we take that out, throw in the bag because it holds carcinogens and that's next to your skin. And one of the biggest things they found is firefighters wash their bunker gear, but they don't wash the fire gloves. So then you're walking around any call later and you wipe your face and there's the carcinogen on your face. So in the grant, I've asked for 25 new protective clothing flash hoods and 25 sets of gloves. The goal is when the people get outside of the building, they throw all of this into the bag. We give them the clean ones. They continue on doing their everyday stuff that need the protective hoods and gloves for. We wash it properly and we put it back into storage and we just keep rotating through with that. I think it's so needed, especially the gloves. Even myself, I never thought of the glove aspect, but once they brought it up at one of our conferences, it happens all the time. You do wipe your face with your gloves, especially if you're sweating, and you use your gloves for all activities. And the third item that I've asked for in the grant is it's a decon tool that goes on one of our hoses. And one will serve all three of our stations because we have a fire. All 3 stations are there, and it's just for a mass spray off. And it just gets all the loose items and like chunks of soot and that and pieces of anything, carbon, and sprays it off. Our practice is that at a fire, when we're all done, if our firefighters' bunker gear is at all dirty, we have them take it off right there at the scene. We bag it, we take it back and wash it. Anything we can do to make it safer for the firefighters. So the grant that we requested is just over $32,000. And there's no additional financial costs to the budget of our regular operational budget. And my recommendation is we proceed with the support of council.
When do you think you might hear back from about the grant?
Maybe really fast, because
Okay.
it's got to be in by 5 o'clock today.
Oh, I mean the response to the application. Is there a long lead in time, or do you have any idea when we might hear back?
I had the fire marshal's office, my area rep, call me this morning, and they've been following all the applications and they're ready to make decision fast.
Okay, great. Oh,
Yes.
that's great. Good. Any comments or questions? I think it's a wonderful thing to do. Thank you for the initiative.
Thank you.
Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Short, Reed, and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shorty, second by Councillor Barry. Be resolved, Council receives fire services report FD 1524 regarding a funding opportunity under the Ministry of the Solicitor General Fire Protection Grant for information, and council hereby authorize staff to submit an application to the Ministry of Solicitor General Fire Protection Grant in the amount of $32,313 plus applicable taxes for cancer prevention equipment, supplies, personal protection equipment, and cleaning equipment. And finally, that council authorize the CAO to sign the necessary documents associated with the grant.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, She.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we'll stop for lunch and return in half an hour. Is that enough time? So 12:30. Thanks one and all. It's been a great morning. Great, welcome back, everyone. So we'll move straight into administration business. First up is the Dorset Museum Committee update. Is there a council member who would like to speak to those? Ms. Shortreed.
Oh, this is back from the end of June. They were just preparing for Heritage Day, but after the rain, it was a really, really huge success. And the other item on the minutes was the Friends of Dorset who volunteer to be a greeter at the museum when people come in. They take donations for the Friends of Dorset, and they're asking for a point of sale terminal to be able to accept donations because cash is becoming very limited. So that their ask on these minutes is to look into point of sale, which I believe the CEO said it would need to go to IT.
Do you want to comment on that?
I can, absolutely. And Councillor Shortreed and I did speak about this. So if because it's an initiative from the Friends, it needs council support. And normally point of sale machines, for example, does need to ensure that we meet certain criteria that I won't pretend I know exactly what it is. But so we'll just have to go through, we'll need to know what it is, if council supports it, what it is exactly, the brand, and then we'll chat with IT about the requirements that they'll need to meet.
And this works with our finance system and everything else that's
That part
all.
I haven't chatted with the treasurer at this point, but I guess the only question that I would have and council would need to support as well is the point of sale machine. So obviously the funds collected, their donations for the Friends that are then donated for the museum projects. It would go direct to an account that the Friends holds. So that just needs to be clear as well. And if council's in support of that, we can continue investigating that.
So support and principle on that, I take it, great. And I see that there has been a donation made in memory of Janet McKay Roberts. That's lovely. Did you want to speak to that at all?
That's all I know about it.
Okay, well, we're grateful to the Robinson family for that donation. Thank you. Is that clear for a way forward then, Madam Clerk? Great. So could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Barry and Councillor Richards.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Richards. Be resolved, Council receives the June 25th, 2024 Dorset Heritage Museum Committee meeting minutes for information. And that the request from the Friends of the Dorset Museum, excuse me, for a point of sale machine be supported in principle and council direct staff to investigate.
All in favor? That's carried. So up next, there's a road naming bylaw, which I think is coming back in the bylaw section, but are there any comments you wish to make?
No, this is just standard when the county advises us there's been a couple of, if there's new private road names added, then we just have to update our bylaw. So it is in the bylaw section for council's approval.
Great. Yes, Councillor Barry.
We don't weigh in on the names or anything. Just wondering, Minden Point Trail in Algonquin Highlands, is that? It is what it is? Okay. Yes.
My understanding is I do know we have Minden Bay on Quagma Lake, and this is in that area.
Okay. Great. So we'll see that in the bylaw section. There's an integrity commissioner report that's come through as well. Do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, as part of the code of conduct of council, our integrity commissioner is to report yearly on any activities. So attached for council's information is the report for 2023.
Any comments on that? It's a light report, which is good news for any township. Thank you. So there's a motion to receive. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Richards, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be resolved, council receives the annual integrity commissioner's report for 2023 submitted by Tony Fleming for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank So back to you, Madam Clerk, for cemetery bylaw amendment submission. Oh, Sarah, yeah, sorry, Sarah's going to talk us through that one. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor,
Welcome.
Council.
Take it away.
Sure. So I've just brought a report to council because we are in the process of amending our cemetery regulation bylaw. And we've met the criteria of Ontario Reg 3011, section 150. We've completed the circulations, notifications, postings at the cemetery. But so I'm ready, staff are ready to submit to the BAO. At the August 15th council meeting, council passed a resolution requesting from the Green Burial Ad Hoc Committee any final recommendations for the Green Burial section at St. Stephen's Cemetery. I have consulted with the BAO, and there potentially might be two sections, depending on what the committee recommends and council supports, that we may have to administratively amend. So I have spoken with one of the licensing officers at the BAO, and they indicated that while we still have it and not submitted it to the BAO, we can still make those administrative changes. So staff would recommend that we wait until the next committee meeting, the Green Burial Committee meeting, to get any final recommendations as council has asked. And that way, if we do need to make any adjustments to our bylaw, I can bring that back to council for a pre-approval before I submit to the BAO. If I submit to the BAO right now, we would have to start the process all over again should any of the recommendations require us to make minor amendments. So we'd have to start the process all over. So staff respectfully recommends that we hold off submitting our final to the BAO until after the October 3rd council meeting, would give the Green Burial Committee an opportunity to bring forward their final recommendations. Staff will participate in the committee and be able to bring forward those recommended administrative changes in the bylaw. And then after that meeting, should council approve and support, then staff would fully be ready to submit to the BAO.
Sounds good. In the recommendations made by the ad hoc committee in August, there included things like, "Ooh, let's consider partnership with a community group," but we've not taken it any further than that. It's a bubble of an idea. Does the BAO submission include such detailed items as partnerships, or is that something that we have a bit more time to think about?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, that wouldn't need to be covered in the bylaw. The two sections that I'm thinking are 8.9 and 8.2, and it comes into relation of how the grounds are kept after or before, specifically if there's watering, how things will be planted. Those would need to be changed depending on what the committee recommends and council supports. Okay. So any future projects that's not governed by the bylaw, that would be a decision within council's ability. That's not covered in the bylaw.
So of note for staff and council then will be during that meeting, if this is council's desired way forward, is to have some pretty good thinking about the partnership piece, if that changes the recommendation on the watering and the plantings, because there would be staff implications one way or the other, and we'll have to bear those in mind, even if that doesn't get into the BAO submission itself. So that'll be a really important consideration. Yes, Councillor Barry.
Just looking at the calendar, and as far as timing goes, technically our next Green Burial Committee would be on the 24th. We could submit the minutes from that meeting on the 25th to be in our third council meeting. So we're coming back to the committee because the previous committee or the previous meeting, they sort of gave their list of recommendations in regards to the naturalization and the water request that came to council. We're going back to them to sort of say where council sits. But is there a fine, and then it would come back to council of the committee's acceptance of where council sits on that?
Yes, Sarah.
If I may, through you, Deputy Mayor, what I think would be best is if on the 24th, if the committee had their recommendations, we would like to water. However that looks, In the motion to council in their minutes, then staff would be able to operationally look to see if that can happen. And then we can take 8.9 where it says no watering, and we can amend that before it gets submitted. So I think it's like, for me, the way I look at it is the Green Burial ad hoc, their final recommendations of what they would like to see happen. And then staff would respectfully recommend what needs to be put on into the bylaw to support that. Yeah.
And then it would not go back to the committee. Okay.
Through, if I may,
please.
Deputy Mayor, when the minutes come forward from the Green Burial, they'll come to council for review, while staff will also submit a report with those recommended changes to the bylaw.
Okay.
At the same meeting. So after the third, staff would submit to the BAO. Should council support.
So it seems like it's a tighter turnaround, but a very feasible turnaround in terms of the next sitting of the Green Burial Ad Hoc Committee.
Okay, that's the part that would staff have an opportunity to see the minutes before the council meeting? Or would they hear of the final recommendations at council?
As the note taker for Green Burial, I can commit to having them submitted the very same day, and I hope that would give staff enough time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Anything else on that matter? Great. Well, that's good. That's good news for us. Yeah, thank you. Do we have a motion there to receive? Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, council receives report DC 424 regarding the status of the submission to the Bereavement Authority of Ontario for information, and council directs final submission to the Bereavement Authority of Ontario be postponed until after the October 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting, and that council requests the Green Burial Ad Hoc Committee bring all final remaining recommendations to the October 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting for council's consideration.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That's great. So we're going to slip into planning business. There's only one item, the acquisition and assumption road bylaw of Hawk Valley Road. And I think there was a small amendment that you wanted to confirm, Sean, is that correct? Otherwise, it's a fairly straightforward bylaw to pass.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct. There was a minor amendment that, staff have confirmed should be changed. So in accordance with the previous resolution of council, I would support the bylaw being passed today.
Great. Any questions or follow up on that? Thank you. We'll see that in bylaw section.
Thank you.
On to external board meetings. Councillor Shortreed, anything from the partnership or the health hub?
Not as of yet. They're just warming up to get all their schedules going.
Great.
After summer. We'll hear soon.
Good. And Councillor Richards, Upper Trent Water Management or Muskoka Watershed Council?
Neither at this time. There's no pending meeting for the Upper Trent, and the Muskoka Watershed won't meet until September 20th.
Great. On the Haliburton County OPP Detachment Board, I'm happy to report that we are currently reviewing options for our community member, and that selection should be made very, very soon. And there were applicants from each of the 4 lower tier municipalities, which is really lovely. Yeah. Nothing on EORN that I have been informed of. Haliburton County Library Board, as we saw in our tour just a week or so ago, the furniture is now in place and it's looking fabulous. Do we have an update on start time? We haven't had a board meeting for quite some time now.
I actually, if I can just have a moment just to look quickly in my email. We did get an email today from the library. I apologize. They are looking at finalizing a date. Now I need glasses. They're just waiting on the delivery of some outstanding tables and chairs, but they anticipate that to be in the next week or two. And they're hoping to do a soft opening on Friday, October 11th. Okay. with an official grand opening on Friday, October 25th. Of course, this was just sent out this morning, so, but it is in your email inbox as well as the mayor's to confirm that that works for everyone. So those
Great.
aren't official dates at this point.
It's very exciting that there is a date even in the calendar. It's lovely, lovely news. Community safety and well-being plan update. I have nothing on that, nor on the watershed. County council update. I think the big news with regards to Algonquin Highlands is that Mr. Card came to the accessibility meeting at county to present the plans for Oxtongue Lake and making the back portion accessible, with the view of eventually having the accessible entrance at the into the back of the building itself, and got some great recommendations from that committee to go forward to making that site accessible. And actually, I think that's a bit of a game changer for Oxtongue Lake. That whole space is going to be open to the public and community members, straight from the little garden area to the toilets to the pavilion. It will really open up space for everyone, including visitors coming through on the way into the park. So that's actually a really big step, and I'm so glad that such great support was given from that meeting. And I believe that is all for external boards. Notice of motion. Councillor Richards, you have a notice of motion? Would you like to present that to us?
Right. Yes, I wanted to bring a notice of motion to have a discussion on the ability to camp on private lands that we own. We currently are not allowed to do so, as we heard in our last meeting. And I'm hoping that council would be open to discussion on revisiting that issue. Of course, with the considerations in mind for some of the unintended consequences that may bring. And the reason for previously choosing not to. Which I do believe are some very valid concerns. And yet, I'd like to see how we could possibly come to some exception to that to allow for it.
Great. And opening up a section of the comprehensive zoning bylaw is fine in terms of process.
Thank you. Yes, we can review our bylaw at any time, should council direct to do so. One clarification I would request is council looking for information on camping on vacant land or developed parcels of land?
I believe both would be, yeah, yes.
And also further clarification, just for Sean to bring back as well, is it intended to be all residential properties, like shoreline, residential, rural? Okay.
To have the conversation, I think is a good start to look at them all, and then council can determine if there are any differences they want to make. Anything further to add so that that staff can be prepared for that? No. Great. Well, thank you for raising it. I think it's a good subject for certain. Is there someone who would like to second that notice of motion? Councillor Barry, thank you. And so that will be tabled at a future council meeting.
Moved by, excuse me, moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that the notice of motion from Councillor Richards regarding the Township zoning bylaw and official plan provisions related to camping on residential properties be received, and council supports a discussion on the said matter and direct staff to prepare a report containing information and recommendations to be added to the October 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting.
All in favor? Lovely. That's passed. Thank you, Sean, very much. Next is correspondence. Were there any supports for the correspondence received?
No.
No, okay. So with that, I think we'll go into closed second.
Just to receive.
Oh,
our
yes,
correspondence.
thanks. Mover and a seconder to receive. Councillors Richard and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richard, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives September 5th, 2024 correspondence listing for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is closed session. Could I have a mover and a seconder to enter closed? Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, the council adjourns its open session at 12:57 PM in order to proceed into closed session in accordance with sections 239(2) of the Municipal Act for the purpose of discussing the following matters: personal matters about identifiable individuals, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, and advice subject to solicitor-client privilege in accordance with section 239(2)B and E. Regarding a legal matter, and personal matters about identifiable individual, and litigation or potential litigation in accordance with section 239(2)B and E, potential legal action.
All in favor? Is carried. Thank you, everyone. We will be back to finish up the meeting shortly. Welcome back to open session. We are now entering our bylaw session. So would you like to take us through those, Madam Clerk?
There for adoption?
Do you want to do, are you doing them all in, no,
We do them in one.
one at a
Yep.
time? Okay, great. So our bylaw to regulate the keep,
We do them all.
yeah, no,
together.
that's what I thought. Yes, yeah.
Just need to move on in a second.
Oh, that's right. I'm moving in a second. Thank you. Councillor Barry, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and passed with a corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2024-18 to adopt a dog control bylaw, bylaw 2024-85 to adopt a road naming bylaw, and bylaw 2024-87 as amended to authorize the acquisition and assumption of road bylaw for Hawk Valley Road.
All in favor? That's carried. And could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-88 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its regular meeting on September 5th, 2024, be received and read a first time, considered read a second, third time, and finally passed with a corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. And a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Shortreed and Councillor Richards.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that the September 5th, 2024 meeting be adjourned at 1:35 PM.
All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, one and all.